Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call this workshop to order. This is a workshop of the Goochland County Board of Supervisors on August 29th, 2018 at 1 p.m. I'd like to welcome everyone here who took the time out of their schedule to join us. Before we get started, I'd like to make a couple of procedural announcements, since some of you may have attended public hearings in the past but may or may not have attended a workshop. Workshops are a little bit different, and I'll go through some of those differences right now just to let folks know. Today, Kimberly Horn will be presenting a draft of the MTP to the Board of Supervisors, and staff is on hand also to make comments to the Board of Supervisors as well. So this is a meeting between staff and our outside consultants and the Board of Supervisors, and not necessarily a public hearing for the public comment. There'll be no decisions made today. For those that were expecting a decision, the meeting would generally be held in a conference room in a more informal atmosphere, but based on the attendance today, the anticipated attendance, we decided to move it to this boardroom so that the minutes can be taken and the meeting can be recorded as well. If there is time at the end, we may entertain a citizen comment period, because we never like to miss an opportunity to hear what's on citizens' minds. So even though it's not a public hearing, we may or may not take that opportunity to open it up. If we do, it wouldn't be to solicit presentations from citizens, but just to hear what's on their mind. So with that in mind, we probably will not allow the transfer of minutes, but just would like to hear what people are thinking. So it'd just be limited to the usual 3 minutes if there's time remaining at the end. So those are just a couple of procedural comments so that everyone's on the same page before we get started. At this point, we'll go ahead and turn it over. Ms. Badesky, would you like to bring forward Kimberly Horn to walk us through?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, actually, Mr. Kilduff is going to lead the presentation with the support of our consultants. Okay. This is, as Todd will go through with you, this a step in the process. There's still a fair amount of work and public opportunity after today. This board is not projected to consider adoption until November, so there is a lot of work and feedback. It's important to note that at each step along the way, we've had 2 community meetings already. There have been substantial changes to draft work product that have followed each of those meetings. Today, you will yet hear some potential additional changes from the last citizen meeting. And so the feedback that we've received from our residents has directly guided this long-term plan, the major thoroughfare plan that will serve our county well into the future. And so this is an opportunity for the board to hear the most recent set of changes, also give your thoughts and guidance to staff and our consultants as this plan continues to work its way through the process. Not only today if time permits, but at the Planning Commission and Board, there will be more opportunities for this plan to be tweaked and before its final projected adoption. So this is yet just another step in that process. So Todd, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Badesky, I'm Todd Kilduff, Deputy County Administrator for Community Development and Economic Development. And as Mr. Badesky stated, we have the 2040 Major Thoroughfare Plan update presentation for you. That was really a culmination of a lot of work from our consultants, from county staff, community meetings, and several other steps along the way, which we'll get into. Before I get into the presentation, I'd just like to introduce Kimberly Horn. We have Carla Tewksbury and Whitney Sokolowski here. They've really been the ones that are behind the computers all day, crunching the numbers and putting together the report that's sitting in front of you, as well as helping us pull together this PowerPoint presentation. And we also have Tom Coleman sitting here. He is principal planner for the county, and he's basically been our internal project manager for this project. And I should also mention other county staff as well. This project itself has been an impact to several different divisions in all of community development. So we've had other people who have pulled together to help us put this presentation together as well. So just a quick agenda. I shouldn't say quick, there's a few bullet points up there. I want to go over real quickly the public meeting summary that we've had, some progress on the NTP, and then get back into some slides that were actually shown at the previous community meetings, but we think there's a lot of value in bringing that back to the public and to yourselves to show you what is the MTP, why is it important, why update it. We'll go over the existing traffic conditions, future traffic conditions if there weren't any improvements made, future traffic conditions with the improvements, which is basically our recommendations. And then there's a little bit of supplemental information to that, and then we'll go over the next steps. So the public meetings, we've actually had two. There was one back in March, and then there was one earlier this month. And some of the high points, some of the high-level items that we were hearing from our residents and citizens was to preserve the rural character of the county. That was one of the #1 items. Improving safety on rural roads, improving intersection operations and safety, explaining what the difference is between this plan and the comprehensive plan and how they work together, avoiding neighborhood impacts, the Hockett Road corridor area, the Cobblestone Circle residents, and a few others that voiced opinions on that as well. Provide supporting documentation for our recommendations, avoid amenity impacts. For example, at the second community meeting, there was a question on a road that could have potentially impacted the Richmond Country Club. And then really, this is something that we've heard as a theme for years now. It's just balancing our priorities versus the growth that we're seeing more specifically on the east end of the county. So the progress we've made so far, we had a project kickoff meeting many moons ago. That's really where we started pulling together a lot of our studies, looking at the original 2005 major thoroughfare plan. Again, this is just an update to the plan that already exists, and we have some really, really good slides and recommendations to show to you as to why this update was actually needed for us as a county. And as mentioned, we had our first public meeting in March where we had some public comment. And we reviewed some of the traffic analysis and models and some crash analysis information, but that was really limited on the amount of data that we had at that time. Again, we just held that first meeting to hear what the citizens' comments were on the original plan that would help guide us to the second community meeting. So then we had the second community meeting a few months later that incorporated more comments from the citizens. And that actually got us more towards our recommendations and justification criteria. And at that meeting, we did provide the recommendations that I'm going to show you here in this slideshow. And they've been tweaked based on the comments that we received at that meeting. And then today, we're having the work session. So what is the MTP? It's a long-term transportation planning tool. It's very important to us because it is actually part of the comprehensive plan. It could be viewed as its own separate standalone plan, which it sort of is, but it really is part of the comprehensive plan. So as this plan is approved moving forward, that actually updates the comprehensive plan as a whole. Provides for orderly development of our roadway networks as land development occurs, which is very important to us, and identifies transportation multimodal improvements throughout the county. Why is it important? It provides guidance to all of us, from the county leaders to its citizens and the development community for transportation-related decisions. The second bullet point provides guidance for preparing regional transportation plans. That's important to us because while, yes, we are Goochland, we are part of the Richmond region. We are part of that more global view of our road network. Since 288 isn't just in Goochland, it's in other counties. Broad Street isn't just in Goochland, it's other counties. So we want to make sure we take that into consideration. It also helps us be more competitive for transportation funding. We had 4 smart scale applications that we made just a few weeks ago that Mr. Coleman was a part of and did for us. There was one project that wasn't part of the overall regional plan yet, so we had to take extra steps, which could be viewed as a reactive step, but it wasn't. We had a project that just became realized, but having all these projects set for us eliminates that critical step of having to have the region approve and sign off on those plans before we go for funding. So it's another important aspect of this. Provides direction for allocating county funds for transportation improvements, which is always very important. And it is a living document that outlines all of our future needs. So why update it? Well, as mentioned before, the previous plan is from 2005. We had some snickering at the first community meeting, if you recall, with, let's say, Broad Street Road being, that's always my example, Broad Street Road being widened from a 2-lane to a 4-lane all the way to Fluvanna. Rock Castle Road, if you've been on Rock Castle, that had improvements. I want to say Shannon Hill had improvements. Haydensville Fife had improvements. There was a lot of roads that were listed, and I'm going to get into more detail on those. But sort of our gut reaction was, does Broad Street need to be widened all the way to Fluvanna? Gut reaction is no, But we had our engineers prove to us with data-driven information that that's actually not the case anymore. But I'll get into that. So that's really why this plan needed to be updated. It has served us well, though. I don't want to say that what the projects were in there, even though some may not really be needed anymore, it has served us well. It was the foundation, as I said, of the smart scale applications that we just had a few weeks ago. Without that plan, we wouldn't have had those projects and we wouldn't have had applications. It was also very critical with the capital improvement model, the capital impact model that was approved back in January. That model incorporates all the road projects that were identified in the major thoroughfare plan and some other plans as well. So it has served us well, but it does require some updating. It assures transportation networks align with updated comprehensive plan. Review and analyze existing traffic network operations and deficiencies. That's more of the data-driven aspect of this. And again, as citizens had concerns with future growth, these road projects, these recommendations that we have, we feel help us plan for that future growth. And it estimates costs for proposed recommendations to position us for financial success. So again, it's more tied into making sure that we have the appropriate projects, the appropriate funding lined up for it, so we know what funds to pursue with VDOT. Because VDOT, their system's a little difficult to navigate. There's a lot of different funding sources. There's smart scale applications, there's revenue share applications, and we just want to make sure that the roads we've identified are lined up with what VDOT can offer us. Having said that, let's go into the existing traffic conditions. This is basically where our county sits today with regard to the traffic volumes, roads, level of service, things like that. So the traffic volumes, if you see today, I don't think it's much of a shock, but we do know we have some issues on certain roads. There's a lot of green, which is really good. Those green lines are showing us that our existing average daily traffic is actually pretty good. There are some yellow, orange, and some red lines. And as a result of that, we knew that we had some areas to focus on. Lane capacities. Again, this is just with existing traffic data, not future. You'll see, what this was really saying is, if a road is designed for 10 cars per day and 10 cars per day are on that road, 10 divided by 10 is 1, so it's saying it's at capacity. It can't handle any more. But what if 12 cars were on that road? Well, now it's over capacity and something needs to be done. And if you see the color coding here, we're blue and green throughout the county. The next slide after this one is going to show the same map but with the level of service attached to it, but I wanted to discuss briefly what level of service actually means. We have discussed this at the first two community meetings, but it's worth bringing up because it is an important aspect of traffic planning and transportation planning. It's really a grade allocation just like you'd have in school, A, B, C, D, E, F, and we throw the images on the right side of the screen there showing you what that actually means. It's really a level of comfort. Like, how comfortable are you on a road? Can you change lanes easily? Do you have to constantly try to wedge yourself between two cars to get to the right or to the left? Also with traffic signals, are you waiting 7 or 8 turns before you actually get to go through the traffic signals? So it's really your comfortability at these items. So the LOS today, we just listed everything from A through C because what this plan attempted to do was to get all of our roads, and we'll get into the future side of things here in a minute, was to try to have all of our roads be a level of C or better. A, B, or C is what we were shooting for. And today we do have some D level roads. And again, none of these should be a shock. We know at the Oilville exit, which is 617, Route 617 highlighted there, we know there's some issues if you've been on that interchange with I-64 either in the morning or late in the afternoon. If you're driving east on 64 in the afternoon, those cars are lined up almost back to the rest area. So we know that's an issue. And we've also had several complaints on the I-64 Ashland Road interchange. And some good news with that is we've already held a community meeting many moons ago about what the public would prefer to have at that interchange based on the recommendations from VDOT. VDOT had a few recommendations. They had a double roundabout. They had a full clover leaf. They had a divergent diamond interchange, which is what you see at Zions Crossroads. And what we've gone with is based on the public feedback was the divergent diamond interchange. So that's not in place yet. That was a smart scale application, so it's going to be a few years from now before that project's realized. But that's really why you're seeing that D there today. We also looked at the crash analysis from 2011 to 2017. It's not anything we really like to talk about, but it is a huge part of this plan. There's a little over 2,000 crashes in that time frame. Sadly, there was 21 fatalities, almost 1,000 injuries, and over 1,000 property damage crashes. And the last bullet point is sort of the important one. There's been an upward trend. It hasn't flatlined and it hasn't gone down. It's actually an upward trend, and it's not shocking given the growth that we're seeing on the east end of the county. We asked Kimley Horn to put together a heat map for us showing those crashes. I won't go through this in too much detail, but you can see some of the strategic areas already mentioned: Oilville, Ashland Road on Broad Street and Route 288, where some traffic signals are already going to be installed. As a matter of fact, that particular interchange is going to have the traffic signals, I believe, this fall installed. And down on West Creek, excuse me, West Creek Parkway and Patterson Avenue, those materials, from what we've heard, are already ordered. Is that right, Mr. Coleman? The materials are already ordered for that interchange. So we're excited about that. That can help us significantly. So the next step we wanted to do, this is a little more of an exercise than anything, is what would our roads look like in the future if we didn't make any improvements? What does that mean to our roads? What does that do to the level of service? What does that do to the volume to capacity? So without any improvements, that original traffic volume map that you saw a few minutes ago that had a lot of green lines on it, a lot of them have turned yellow, red, and orange. So we know, we already knew there were some improvements that needed to be done in certain areas. This has identified more areas throughout the company that would need attention if we didn't do anything. In line with that is our lane capacity. You see a little bit more red there, a few more orange roads. Let me know if I'm going too fast. And then the level of service. Again, we had a lot more green on the other one. Now that we're seeing a little bit more red and a little bit orange. So this exercise was important to hone in a little further on areas that would require improvements. So the future traffic conditions with the recommended improvements. The first few exercises with the existing conditions and then the existing conditions with the future road traffic were really important to get us to this very important stage, which is the actual recommendation section of things. The recommendations were based on many things, but we wanted to put a few bullet points up here as to what really guided us. And one key item is the first one, which is our guiding principles. They're actually going to be listed on the next slide, so I'll go into more detail on what those are. But we also used our transportation plans. That was in the data gathering phase of this. More importantly, the Plan 2040, which is the responsibility of the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization. That's the RRTPO. That's for the whole Richmond region. Their plan is to 2040. In case you're wondering why our plan goes to 2040, that is the reason why. We use existing safety and operational data. That was important for this. We also use the comprehensive plan and the analysis of future road conditions with no improvements as mentioned. And last but not least is the public comments. We had a lot of public comments at the first community meeting and the second community meeting. After the first community meeting, we actually called in some of those constituents, some of those residents that had those major concerns. We sat down with them and said, to gather a little more detail on really what are their concerns. What are they? What didn't they like about the plan? I think there was probably 4 or 5 different meetings with residents, developers, and some of the developers' engineers. Then we had the second community meeting. There's still some concerns, so we called in those constituents and sat down with them and said, all right, here's some suggestions that we think could alleviate maybe your concerns. Do you agree with these? And I'm happy to say that out of those meetings have come some really productive conversations. And those conversations have helped guide us on our recommendations. And I'll get into more specifically on those recommendations, which ones we're talking about. And then we also added in the justification criteria, which was a request at one of the community meetings. So we'll show you what that is as well. Our guiding principles, first and foremost, is always safety. It's not just with transportation, it's with construction, it's with everything we do. We want to make sure that our residents are safe. So this improves the travel safety for all types. We wanted to look at our designated growth areas, trying to preserve the rural character of our county. We also wanted to look at the connectivity of our roads. And it's not just roads, it's sidewalks, things like that. It's not just a road itself. Level of service, that was an important factor here, and we wanted to make sure that was looked at, because as you see right next to it, we said we wanted to achieve LOSC or better. Economic development was a big driver of this. We wanted to make sure we took into consideration all the development that we would see in our strategic growth areas, the courthouse, Oilville, east end of the county, and those areas. And multimodal was also an aspect of this to provide balanced transportation system for those items. This map is actually very important. This is our 2005 plan. This is not a map that we created for this presentation. It actually exists in the original plan. The thing to look at on this map is all the different colors. Not specifically what the colors mean in the legend, I just mean look at all the colors. There's a lot of recommendations here on this map. There's blue lines that are going out to Fluvanna's border, up to Louise's border. There's red lines, there's orange lines. Some of these the plan sort of still agrees with, but a lot of this isn't really needed anymore. And what does that mean? This image is showing from that 2005 plan all the projects that don't need to be done anymore based on the new data. So financially, this is important. This slide is actually very important, so I want to talk about it for a second. All these blue lines don't need to be done anymore based on the data-driven information that Kinley Horn has provided to us. In 2005, in that plan, it showed about over $100 million worth of road projects. Some of the roads didn't have costs associated with them, so I put that as a bullet point. And I can only assume it's because maybe the road project was identified so far in the future that they just didn't want to allocate a cost to it. But adding up all those projects, it's a little over $100 million. Back in 2017, we had to take those numbers and update them for the capital impact model and the capital improvement plan. And all those projects in 2017 dollars were a little over $200 million. So another way to look at this is that's $200 million or more that we would not be seeking funding for. That's taxpayer dollar savings just on this one slide alone that we're showing. We would not be seeking local, state, or federal funds for these projects at all. And what that also does, in turn, allows us to focus a little more on the projects that are identified. That could take, another way to look at it is take that $200 million and focus it a little more on the projects that we know need to be done. This is an overview map of the recommendations. We're going to get into each one individually here in just a moment, but if you notice, there's a significant less colors on this map. It doesn't have Broad Street highlighted all the way to Fluvanna. It doesn't have a lot of those projects that were identified in the 2005 plan highlighted. And some of these are just minor improvements. They may look like a long green line, but it's a minor improvement, maybe just a little bit more right-of-way here and there. But I think the big takeaway with this slide, there's a lot less projects that the plan's identifying. Before we get into the actual recommendations, we want to show you how we're splitting it up. We split it up between west, central, and east. It's a little bit easier to discuss what's in the western side of the county, the central service area, and the eastern service area of the county. And the justification criteria. We have 4 justification criteria. There's the operational side of things. This one isn't just, we think of the travel time, driving from point A to point B, but it's not just us traveling. It's how fast can the police get to your house? How fast can fire and rescue get to your house? Those are also important aspects that we wanted to take into consideration operationally. Connectivity, we've already touched on a few points there, but again, it's part of our criteria. Multimodal, and again, last but not least, is safety. We always want to make sure that that's taken into consideration. So those are our criteria that we used. Again, that comes directly from citizen feedback. Moving into the western service area, there's 2 recommendations. We have the justification criteria at the top. As you can see, there's operational, connectivity, multimodal, and safety. The 2005 plan was showing a 2-lane undivided road. Well, the 2040 plan is showing a 2-lane undivided road, but it's really the improvement is just widening to accommodate wider shoulders is all it is. A little more right-of-way for wider shoulders to make the road more safe. And safety is really the key on this particular item. And this is River Road West. I apologize, I didn't even say what it was. River Road West from the Fluvanna County line to Sandy Hook Road. In the second community meeting, we also showed cross-sections of what that road would look like. That was one of the tasks that Kinley Horn had, so they provided us with cross-sections for all these recommendations. Hiddensville Fife Road, same thing. Widen the right-of-way to accommodate some wider shoulders. And this one, as you see, is more safety and operational as opposed to having connectivity. There's a cross-section, same cross-section. So that's it for the western side of the county. Moving to the central area, central service area, we have Whitehall Road at Sandy Hook Road intersection. Again, this isn't necessarily the road itself, it's just the intersection. The 2005 plan showed relocating the curve that's there in the Sandy Hook. I've been on that curve many a times, and that's what it's asking to do, relocate that curve. And the new plan's saying, yeah, you could still do that, but it's also the potential location for a one-lane roundabout or another improvement as well. But it didn't say you didn't have to do what the 2005 plan said, which is relocate. This one we're all familiar with. It's the Fairground Road intersection and extension project from Fairground to River Road West. It's a 2005 plan identified it as a 2-lane undivided road, adding a left and right turn lane at the intersection. And the 2040 plan is saying make it a 3-lane undivided road, 1-lane roundabout at the intersection, and constructing multimodal facilities. Maybe the public may not know this, but we have already, the actual intersection is already in the engineering phase. It's fully funded and being designed by VDOT as we speak. And the extension project, we just signed the revenue share agreement just recently, about a week or two ago, and that's back with VDOT, so that project is going to be moving forward as well. Our goal is to take both of those projects, even though it's listed up here as one sort of. VDOT has the intersection, but we're more involved with the extension portion of it. I mean, we're involved in both, but it's really VDOT's full funds is for that. We're trying to do it seamlessly, is the point. We wanted to make sure that we were set up to a position where we weren't too far behind them, that they would sort of be perceived as two separate projects. We wanted them to be seamless, so it looks like one. So when the roundabout's complete, the extension's complete. So we've been working diligently with VDOT on that. We just received their 20% drawing, and I repeat, 20% drawing. It's not the 100% drawing. This is their 20%. So it's a really high level. There's a lot going on in this plan, but it does show the roundabout, that the image that we just received from them. It looks to be, when you compare it to the original drawing we saw, I guess it was probably about a year ago that they presented us a higher level roundabout drawing to give us a good feel for what this would look like. This roundabout appears to be a little bit smaller, a little less impact to the northeast quadrant, but it still does show impacts to the Exxon facility, and the extension itself to the west still shows a service road, so we're very happy about that. We wanted to have an access road behind the Exxon station and providing them another access back there. So we're actually very happy with this project right now, and we will always keep you posted on it as it moves forward. Oh, yeah, so we threw in the schedule here. The project engineering is underway. Right-of-way should be coming soon. There's only one right-of-way that we know that we really do need to obtain, and then the construction would be around November of 2021. Nothing else there that we didn't touch on. Fairground Road from Broad Street to Sandy Hook. 2005 plan showed it widening for the right-of-way. When we went to I believe it was the second community meeting, or maybe it was the first one, this was shown as a 4-lane road. And we had a lot of questions as to, is that even possible? Can you even widen Fairground Road to a 4-lane road? And Kimley Horn has shown that a 3-lane road is probably better, which would be an east to west and turn lanes in the middle. If you're not familiar with what a 3-lane road actually means, it's really just having a turn lane in the middle, undivided. But making it a 3-lane, even though the model is showing us that a 4-lane is what's needed, if we just went with a 3-lane, it would impact the level of service and a few other things. So there is a downstream effect to keeping it a 3-lane, and obviously keeping it a 2-lane, which is what it is today. You've seen on the previous slides under the no-build conditions what Fairground Road would look like. So we welcome any feedback on this road as well. And as the last few bullet points on this slide show, 3-lane road would keep it at an LOS D, whereas the 4-lane would be an LOS B. So that'd be something to take into consideration on this road. And this would be a cross-section. Oilville Road, 2005 plan showed it as a 4-lane undivided. 2040 still showing 4-lane undivided. and you say, well, if there's no improvement being recommended here, and it's still red, what does that mean? Well, again, we're going after a smart scale application for the interchange, because it's not really the road itself, it's the interchange that's the issue. So that's already well underway, and we're very happy about that. It was a 2018 smart scale application. Hopefully 10, 11 months from now, we hear from VDOT that they are going to fund this project. We'll keep you posted as soon as we hear something from them. This is just an intersection item here. This is Broad Street at Cardwell Road. 2005 plan said shows realignment of the intersection. 2040 plan is showing either convert the intersection to a T intersection configuration. And recommendation from Fairground to Cardwell Well. That actually comes from, sorry, I should have said that first. That recommendation came from the Fairground Road to Cardwell Road safety study that VDOT did for us last year. So that actually comes directly from VDOT. River Road West, from Sandy Hook to Hermitage, very long distance here. 2005 plan was showing a 3-lane undivided road. 2040 plan is also showing a 3-lane undivided road. But it also has constructing multimodal facilities to be consistent with a comprehensive plan. And it ends at Hermitage Road because that's where the road is existing 4-lane, so it wouldn't need to be widened after that. It would just, it would taper right into the 4-lane that's there. So it does show the road going through the courthouse, as you can see. It's a little difficult to see, but it's on the left side of that image. In order to preserve the rural character of the courthouse, if it's 3 lanes, it would be a level of service D. Making it 4 lanes would be the level of service B, which is really what we're trying to get to. However, if we want to preserve the rural character of the county and keep it what it is today, we just wanted you to know that the level of service would be at that level of service and not what the model is actually showing us. That's it for the central service area. Moving on to the eastern service area. Tuckahoe Creek Parkway, in the intersection by Hermitage Road to Hockett Road. It showed a 4-lane divided roadway, adding a left and turn lanes at the intersection. The updates are showing a 4-lane divided roadway as well, adding the same turn lanes, and then adding multimodal facilities as well. So this isn't just the road, this is the intersection as well. And here's a cross-section of what the road would look like. Rockville Road, it's from the Hanover County line to Ashland Road. 2005 plan showing a 2-lane undivided. 2040 plan is recommending 2-lane undivided roadway as well. Again, this is just widening the right-of-way to accommodate wider shoulders and multimodal facilities. The big item here, if you notice in the icons, as the justification is the safety aspect. That was our #1 concern with this road. It's a cross-section. Ashland Road from Broad Street to I-64. We're showing in the 2005 plan 4-lane divided, 2040 plan showing 4-lane divided, but constructing multimodal facilities. Again, safety was one of the #1 factors on this road. And again, as mentioned earlier, this was another smart scale application, that interchange there. It's the VDOT just finished, was it the IJR, or sorry, the Interchange Modification Report, the IMR. Got to get my acronyms from VDOT correct. They have an IMR, Interchange Modification Report, showing the divergent diamond interchange. So we know that this intersection will be better at some point in the future when they get that project rolling. But again, it was a 2018 smart scale application. For discussion, again, the data-driven information from the software program is showing that to be a 6-lane to be a level of service B. But if that was not the desire and to keep it a 4-lane, that would be a level of service E. And it does not include potential impact on approved interchange or local connections. So we split, if you notice, we split Ashland Road. The Ashland Road south of 64, Ashland Road north of 64. They're a little bit different because the south of 64 is really impacted by that interchange. While the north is, yes, but it is treated a little bit differently a little farther north. 2005 plan was showing it as a 4-lane divided roadway, whereas the 2040 plan is saying it can still be a 2-lane undivided roadway, but widening the right-of-way to accommodate wider shoulders. And this is what the cross-section would look like. Hockett Road realignment project. This one's been around for a few years. This is not a new project. It was in the 2005 plan, and there were steps taken by the county a few years ago to try and move this project forward. But as we speak, the 2040 plan is showing to construct the south leg of the intersection, still telling us to do what the original plan was telling us to do with constructing multimodal facilities. Just some additional information. It is partially funded back in 2014, has $1.5 million. The TPO funding, it's TPO funding, but it still needs $400,000 based on that 2014 number, which would bring it up to the $1.9 million needed. But again, that was 2014. It's now 2018, and we would suggest that that number would be higher based on the increased cost in constructing for roads that we've been seeing across the board recently. So I just don't want the impression that $1.9 million is all that's needed for this road at the moment. We would have to do a new cost estimate for it. This is what the cross-section would look like. The Three Chopped Road and reconnecting, or I would say reconnection, but it's really connecting Three Chop to itself. Three Chop Road exists on the east side of 288. It exists on the west side of 288, but it's not connecting. It just cul-de-sacs itself. So we did a study probably about a year and a half ago with one of our on-call engineers to just show us the feasibility of connecting those two cul-de-sacs. Like, how can we do that? I mean, the gut reaction is going under 288, but is that feasible? Is that logical? Is that something that can be done? So we hired the right engineers to look at that, and we hired the engineers to look at it, and they did show us that it is feasible to go under 288. As a matter of fact, they were in charge of a project that just did the same thing in Charlottesville. So it's not pie in the sky, it's something that's already been done and something that is feasible. So that was also a smart scale application. Not this entire road, I want to be specific, just around the 288 area, just a small segment going under 288. That's what we applied for funding for. And we hope to come back to you in 10 months or so and say that VDOT gave us the approval to move forward with that project. It was also identified in the arterial management plan, the AMP study that was done by Kimley Horn a few years ago as well. For the road itself, it was, the model showing us 6 lanes to keep it that LOS. It would be, if it was 4 lanes, it would be a level of service D. And I think the distinction here is it's barely popped into the D category, and Kimley Horn could correct me if I'm wrong on that, but even though it is listed as a D on the 4 lane, I think it barely hopped into the D category, but it is there on the 4 lanes. And it does not include potential impacts or improvements of improved interchange or local connections to it. So this was just modeled just for this information here. Going back to the full road itself, going to Ashland Road, it actually wasn't part of the 2005 plan. Again, the AMP plan identified it. So the 2040 plan, we're recommending the 4-lane divided road, extending it under 288 and constructing multimodal facilities with it. And this is what that cross-section would look like of the 4 lanes divided. Wilkes Ridge Parkway Extension, again, not part of the 2005 plan. The 2040 plan is showing it as a 4-lane divided roadway, constructing multimodal facilities on it. And for additional information, to date, the existing road has been privately funded. It's been a developer-driven project. Wilkes Ridge Parkway is already there, and it ends right after the apartment complex right near Sheltering Arms today. And there's plans moving forward to bring that closer to the creek. And this is what a cross-section would look like. So Hockett Road to the future, there's no road name here. It's just really just a connection from Hockett Road to that future Wilkes Ridge Parkway Road that you just saw on the previous slide, and a new Route 288 interchange. This was not part of the 2005 plan, but the new plan is showing a 4-lane divided roadway, and we would offer to conduct a study on the new interchange for 288. This would be different from the IMR. Interchange modification report is modifying something that already exists. This would be an interchange justification report with VDOT. And it's their terminology, it's IJR. So this would be us trying to justify that an interchange is needed. And we would be pursuing TPO funding for the study. That's Transportation Planning Organization. This would be a cross-section. Again, we don't have any imagery for the interchange. This would just be the road. Tuckahoe Creek Parkway Extension and Bridge to Henrico County. Not part of the 2005 plan, but the 2040 plan is showing that that would be needed as a 4-lane divided roadway. There's pressures from Henrico to Route 288. We already know that. And this is a regional model, not just Goochland, so that's why you're seeing this connection to Henrico County. And this would be a cross-section. River Road West from Hermitage Road to Hockett Road. 2005 plan was showing a 4-lane divided roadway. 2040 plan says 4-lane divided roadway, which is actually existing. So really the addition here is constructing multimodal facilities. As you can see, the 2 icons at the top for connectivity and the multimodal aspect. Cross-section. Patterson Avenue from Hockett Road to the Henrico County line. The 2005 plan is showing a 6-lane divided roadway. We're still showing a 6-lane divided roadway, but adding the multimodal facility to it. And this would be a cross-section of what that would look like. River Road. I've been on this road many times. When I was with just the utilities department, we have a lot of infrastructure back in this area. And this is River Road from River Road West, which is sort of where Patterson and River Road tie together to the Henrico County line. It wasn't part of the 2005 plan, but the 2040 plan is showing, because of the growth that not just we're seeing, but this road is also impacted by Henrico's growth as well. Henrico residents travel the road, that it would need to be, the recommendation is for a 3-lane undivided road with multimodal facilities added to it. And for discussion purposes, this is where we're offering some discussion on this road. If it's a 3-lane, it would be an LOSD. But if it was a 4-lane, which is what the model's actually showing us to be, it would be an LOSB, which is what we were trying to achieve. Excuse me. And this would be a proposed cross-section. West Creek Parkway from Patterson Avenue connection, and 2 intersections here. Not part of the 2005 plan. 2040 plan is showing 2-lane undivided roadway. Identify intersection configurations as the roadway is constructed, and we do anticipate this to be privately funded. In an area that we're calling the Southern Prime Economic Development Area, this is probably the area that we've had the most feedback on, from the Hockett Road corridor to the Route 288, Patterson Avenue area. The 2005 plan is showing a north-south connector, 4 lanes divided roadway, with an east-west connector, 4-lane divided roadway. The 2040 plan is showing, well, it's showing many things. As you can see, there's a few different roads here. But it is still showing that east-west connector is showing that is needed to alleviate the traffic burdens. If you recall, at the first community meeting, we had a few residents that were concerned with the original 2005 plan, which is technically still our current plan today, showing Hockett Road widening to a 4-lane road. And there was concerns with that for many reasons. One is some of the houses are pretty close to the road, so widening it would actually bring the road a lot closer to their front porch, and they were not happy with that. So we took that information. This is where we incorporated a lot of the community feedback, and to keep Hockett Road a 2-lane, this is the road network that would need to be installed. So that's the east-west corridor would help with that, or the east-west connector would help with that. If you see the Patterson Avenue connection, at the second community meeting, we had the road going directly south to connect to River Road. And that's an important piece of information right there. We had it going directly south through Cobblestone Circle area to connect to rerouting River Road so that it would be a full interchange. If you recall that slide from back at the second community meeting. We had a lot of residents that had concerns with that, going either through houses or too close to houses. There was questions as to why couldn't it be rerouted in any fashion. And we said, well, thank you for your feedback. Let's go back to the software data, see if we can draft up a few options here and see if it actually still works, or see what the impacts are to that. And the good news is we've been able to accommodate the questions and concerns we had from the Hockett Road residents, and we were able to address the concerns from the individuals that lived in the Cobblestone Circle area by rerouting the Patterson Avenue connecting road, as that call out shows it. We can call it the north-south connector if you want, over to Hockett Road. But as you can see, Hockett Road would need to connect into that road. That's what the model's showing us. We have since met with the residents with this exact image right here, and we did receive some positive feedback on that image. So we feel like those concerns have been addressed. Make sure I've covered everything on this slide. Yep. So the east-west connector, I'll go over a little bit more on another slide here, but it would be, if it was a 4-lane road, it would have a level of service E. Why is that? Well, when the original connection went directly south and connected to River Road, it provided some interconnectivity and a more desired route for the people that would travel on that road. Shifting it back west to Hockett Road and having Hockett Road connecting to it doesn't provide that sort of path of least resistance that the software model uses, meaning more traffic would be going to that east-west connector. So if it's a 4-lane road, the model is showing us it would be a level of service E, and if it was a 6-lane road, it would achieve that level of service C. That's an important item there. And we did show a future connection to the Mosaic property. If you recall, during the Mosaic case, they had a road extension on their plan to the south for interconnectivity purposes. And so that's why we showed that future connection there. That's in case you were wondering why that line goes to nowhere. It doesn't. It actually goes to the Mosaic property. These are cross sections of the Patterson Avenue connection and the east-west connector cross section. So this is a slide I just mentioned when talking specifically with that Southern Prime Economic Development area. If you see the east-west connector is showing LOS of E, again, it's because shifting that road to Hockett Road would alleviate or stop having people going north and south. They would actually have that east-west connector road be the more desirable route to go, the path of least resistance, so to speak. And that's how the model actually functions. And Kimley Horn can speak a little bit more as to how the model actually works with regard to that. And then, again, with Ashland Road, you can see on the north side, that other red line, again, we are seeking funding for divergent diamond interchange with smart scale application. So with these improvements, you'll see we're back down to the blue and the green lines. If you recall the previous slide that had the future conditions with no improvements, there was a lot more red, orange, a lot more yellow. This brings us back down to the green and the blue. And I've already touched on the issues with that east-west connector road right there. But it is important to know that even though the east-west connector is listed as orange, meaning that it would be at capacity, that at capacity is actually range. And you see the range there in the legend. It shows 0.85 to 1. This is 0.87. So it barely pops into that category. And again, that's with future traffic loadings in the year 2040. At the first community meeting, there were some questions as to what our priorities are with this plan. What are our priorities? What are we doing, or what do we plan to do with our roads? Well, I've already touched on a lot of roads that we're already seeking funding for, but what are our projects that are underway or funded? Well, there's the traffic signals at Patterson Avenue and West Creek Parkway. They're fully funded. Route 288 and Broad Street, as mentioned, we should have those installed by this fall. Fairground Road in Sandy Hook, fully funded. It's the roundabout project. The extension project, it's also fully funded. That's a revenue share. That's a revenue share application with VDOT. Again, that's a 50-50. The county puts up 50% of the funds, and VDOT supplements with the other 50%. Patterson Avenue and River Road West, northbound turn lane. Engineering's fully funded for that. Roche Ridge Parkway extension. That would be the new road segment with private funds. Four Rings Drive. It is also a new road segment. It's privately funded. And then the Hockett Road realignment, it's at the bottom. It's partially funded. But the bold text shows what projects are already underway. Our midterm priorities. I-64 Ashland Road interchange. These are all the smart scale applications that I've already mentioned. But we had citizens request what our priorities are, so we wanted to make sure that was shown to you in these charts. Three Chop Road connection, Route 288, which would be the smart scale application from VDOT. Didn't really touch on that. I probably should have on the previous slides because that's important. A lot of the pressures we're seeing in the Hockett Road corridor area, from the Capital One area, Tuckahoe Creek Parkway, Patterson Avenue, it's not necessarily all due to Goochland traffic. It's the 288 traffic that's hurting that area. So we have partnered with the TPO. It's actually the TPO's application to do a STAR study. It's strategically targeted affordable roadway solutions. It's a fancy way of saying, how do we utilize our existing inventory to accommodate the traffic that we're seeing on 288? Well, they have 2 lanes going north, they have 2 lanes going south, but those lanes have shoulders. So VDOT wants to utilize their existing shoulders to make it more or less 6 lanes, 3 lanes north, 3 lanes south. But the caveat there being that those shoulders would only be open during peak traffic hours in the morning and the evenings. This is still in design phase. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's still in more of a charrette phase because they made an application. But they've talked about having the arms, those big borders, barricades go up and down at different times of the day to prevent people from using the shoulders all day long. So it's still work in progress, but we're fully supportive of it. And VDOT has not been shy about saying that they understand that if this STAR study goes forward and is actually constructed, that it's not going to solve all the problems. They know that. They know that it needs to be a true 6-lane road as we speak, 3 lanes north, 3 lanes south. So we were very comforted by them saying that this isn't going to be the say-all, be-all fix, but they know that it's going to help mitigate some of the issues we're seeing today. The Oilville interchange mentioned, and the Route 288 new interchange was mentioned on a previous slide. That would be one of our midterm priorities. Some supplemental information to this report that we felt was important that you know. If this is updated and approved, the MTP would be adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. That's how it would be advertised. And I'll go through the schedule in a second, but assuming we move forward to the November board meeting, that's how it would be advertised. It is an update to the comprehensive plan. It's been 13 years since we've looked at this plan. Our goal is to not wait another 13 years. We want to do this plan. We want to make sure it's right. That's why we've had so many community meetings and subsequent meetings with residents in individual settings. But our goal is to look at this every 5 years. If approved, we would have to do some updates to some of the plans we already have. Our transportation CIP, our capital improvement plan, that needs to be updated because, again, that was built with a 2005 roads in it. So that would need to be updated. And it would also have to update our capital impact model that we have. Again, that was all built using that 2005 data. Important bullet point is this plan does not preclude other plans that have transportation-related projects. It's very important to know that the comprehensive plan does have roads that are already identified in it that you didn't see up here on the screen. And a lot of those roads, there's a few reasons why they're still valid and that we need them. One of the number 1 items is connectivity. Actually, I have a few slides after this, so let me put a pause on that bullet point because we've got a few slides to show you specifically what we mean. So I'll go to the second bullet point. Developer and individual projects. Each significant project has its own TIA. So any project that would come forward, they'd have to do their own traffic impact analysis, which would also help guide this. And it doesn't show in this major thoroughfare plan what those would be. It would be developer driven. But back to the other bullet point. This is just an image from the courthouse. You'll see some yellow dashed arrows highlighted in blue. You didn't see those in the major thoroughfare plan. But these are roads that if development was to arrive in these areas is something that the planning staff would be looking at for interconnectivity to some of our other major roads. So that's the distinction I was trying to make on that previous bullet point. Same goes for the Oilville Village. These are images straight out of the comprehensive plan. You see some more road networks in there. Again, these are more true lines on the map. Yes, the major thoroughfare plan does have lines on a map, but these are more high level. We want to make sure that if developers come in, we have something to speak to as to how we want traffic to move in these areas. And the last image for that we had in here for the comprehensive plan is the center of a village. And I wanted this in here just because it has a lot more. It shows a lot more of that interconnectivity between some of these roads in the Plaza Drive, St. Matthews Road area, There's a spine road that's between Hockett and 288 that goes south from Broad Street. These are roads that we need identified somewhere, so when we have conversations with developers, they understand where we're coming from when we discuss where roads could potentially go or where we would potentially need them. So the next steps. Well, so today, we've just presented the recommendations, and a lot of information was presented here. We would like to have any questions, comments, feedbacks you would have before we finalize the draft report. You have a draft report sitting in front of you. The next step would be prepare the finalized draft report. VDOT's part of this process as well, so we'd have to make a submission to VDOT and have them look at this plan. Then, I think it's next week, September 4th, this would be at the 3 p.m. session. Can't believe September 4th is rolling around so fast. It'd be at the 3 p.m. session, it'd be a referral to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission would then hear it October 4th. Again, it's tentative, depending on how much comments we have and how much feedback and how much more legwork we may have to do after today. And then that would be ultimately the Board of Supervisors meeting on November 7th for recommendation for approval. So that's our plan and the recommendations that we have moving forward. Kinley Horn, again, is here to address any of the more technical data, some of the behind-the-scenes information. So if you have any questions, we're happy to do our best to answer. So.
Mr. Kilduff, thank you for the nice summary. I just did want to clarify, I think twice in your presentation, and you got a lot of information, but you said the red lights at Broad Street and 288 were going to be installed this fall. That's actually fall of 2021, I believe.
Yes, thank you. That's what I meant. I apologize for that. Thank you.
The Hope Church Broad Street red light is going to be in this fall.
That is correct. Yeah, I apologize. That's what I meant.
We would all wish it was done this fall.
We were
So.
hoping you were right.
They're here to answer questions.
Well, Mr. Kilduff, thank you for that extensive presentation. It's a little bit like drinking a glass of water from a fire hose. A lot of information that can take your head off pretty quickly. But a lot of work's been done. Kimberly Horn, thank you for your input on that as well. It's quite a different update than the 2005 plan. Takes into account an awful lot of change that's occurred in the county very quickly. A couple of things, I guess, board, this is, again, not a formal board meeting, but it's meant to be a workshop or discussion type thing, so maybe we can use a discussion type format as opposed to a more formal format. And I guess I'd look to the board for guidance on how to proceed on this. They're standing by to answer our questions. We could take this service area by service area and start with the west and move your way east and provide whatever comments we have, and see if there's consensus on any of those items very quickly. Again, the county staff is looking for guidance or input or reaction, our reaction to what's been presented, so that they can move forward in a proper fashion. So if that works for everybody, perhaps we can go through the different service areas.
It works fine for me. I was just noticing, I was making some notes, and I noticed that there are I saw 4 slides that had 4 discussion. So I was kind of wondering, those were clearly I mean, I know everything's open to discussion, but I thought those slides were almost asking us to address those
Yeah, but
items.
different, because I think in most cases, the level of service had not been brought up to the B or C level, and that's where they were looking for additional comment. But if we go through the projects, starting from the west to east, those slides will come up.
Give me
and we can
30 minutes to toggle backwards here. Can I get control of this and just escape so I can scroll up? It'd be a lot faster if I could just scroll. The keyboard is not working, that's why.
Right,
Thank you.
because I have control of it. Just tell me which
Oh, yeah,
one,
keep
I'm
going.
showing you. Probably 14. 14,
28.
28. Okay, so we're not doing Westford, okay.
Actually, we are. Oh, you're looking at, it's slide 28, page 14.
Gotcha. Slide 28, sorry. That's right, 'cause they have two slides per page. I get it.
There we go. Okay, we've got a lot of lawn to mow here, a lot of wood to chop, so we can, if there's comments, great. If there's no comments, we can move forward. But let me just ask for comments as we go slide by slide. Any thoughts or reaction to River Road West from, it looks like, Fluvanna Line to Sandy Hook?
Yes, I do, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Sorry. Is that on? No. There we go. Okay, so I have one question that probably will, go across a lot of the slides, and that is widening the right-of-way. So these roads, we're not talking about widening the road, we're just the right-of-way, the multimodal thing you're talking about, right? So this is Route 6, and also Haydensville Fife Road, same thing. So I guess my question is a general question. We already have the right-of-way? Are we talking about taking land? I mean, how are we doing this?
Well, depending on, on every road is certainly going to vary as far as the right-of-way. We're trying to minimize the impacts of the right-of-way, but the attempt with all of these roads is to get them more towards the VDOT standard, the standard design as far as the lane widths and the shoulder widths. Again, when you see the amount of traffic that's on some of these roads and the safety concerns that we have, providing a more standard roadway feature, if you will help with all of that. So, and at some point that's a decision if there is right-of-way taking. Are there areas where maybe it's not as impactful to have that right-of-way to improve the geometry and the safety? But assuming that the right-of-way does vary throughout, and there's challenges certainly to get those, but what we really try to do with every typical section we've designed up here is to make sure we're matching the VDOT standard for the roadway, which will certainly help when we're looking for funding for that road, again, to make sure that you're going to get the appropriate funding, but also those maintenance funds to support the road at a later point.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I just
Sure.
add to Ms. Lashlet, to your question? It is a goal on any project for us to not ever want to do a public taking of someone's property. We always try to work with the property owners to make improvements. Some of these plans are also extremely important as development comes along, that you work with the developers to get the right-of-way dedicated at the time of a project. And so some of these are, this kind of distance would be a longer-term project to acquire all of the right-of-way. But if you don't have it on the books, you tend not to get it at the time of the development as they come through. And so these serve as a guidance to us to work with the developers if and when something was to develop, to try to obtain the easement at that time.
Okay, so I have another question. Which county was it that just approved the, Cumberland County, just approved that big landfill? And I haven't seen recent numbers on it, but back a couple of years ago when they were originally talking about starting that landfill, they were estimating one truck every 5 minutes or something on our roads. And has that been taken into consideration on like Dogtown, Whitehall, Route 6, all those roads? Sandy Hook is also impacted. And I believe Cumberland supervisors have approved that project at this point, my understanding.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a concern.
So we use the regional travel demand model for modeling all of the county's roads. And that model does take into consideration different types of socioeconomic data. So population, employment, different things like that. So we would have to go in and look at Cumberland's numbers to see if they accounted for that. That would be something that we would look into. But Cumberland has, just like Goochland County, has gotten the socioeconomic data ahead of time and has worked through with the TPO on those numbers. So if Cumberland knew that that was coming online, most likely that they would be included, so they didn't, you're shaking your head, they
This
didn't
was a
know.
very quick
Okay.
decision.
No,
Okay.
They made the decision in a couple of weeks,
Okay,
and so I doubt that the Cumberland TPO would have gotten
Would
any
have gotten-
data.
okay.
Now, it is, they've approved it, and I think they were ready to have their meeting, the host agreement signed, and I know that there's been some, the public has brought out the legislature out there, and there are some issues with grave sites and so on the property, and so right now, it may be on hold. But they are talking about 300 to 400 trucks per day, and it's less impactful to Cumberland, because the
Than to
majority
us.
of these vehicles are coming from 95 and 64, and so it's more impactful to Powhatan and to Goochland than it is to Cumberland, because the proposed landfill is on the right at the boundary with Powhatan. So the traffic will be moving east, so it's a small impact to them and bigger impact for us.
It sounds like the answer is no.
I think the answer is no, yeah.
well,
My
one
guess is-
other thing to note is our data, our socioeconomic data for Goochland County has been developed based on the capital impact study, so that was our basis,
Right.
Right.
So you didn't include surrounding counties, what they're doing, so the impact to us.
And, you know, I don't know whether a big, heavy dump truck is going to want to take the Cartersville Bridge, or come further west and take the Maidens Bridge, or stay on 60 and go to 288. But I think that those 300 trucks are going to go northeast somewhere.
Right.
And my question, Susan, if I may
Yeah,
interrupt you, a question for me is this stretch, this first stretch that we were looking at, the Fluvanna line to Sandy Hook.
Yep.
Do we have by segment the number of accidents in these areas? Because I'm thinking, okay, so widening the road, I mean, I take the road once in a while. Traffic is not horrible.
Yep.
I know there are places where there's no shoulder, so I'm wondering, are there accidents where people run off the road and there's no shoulder to rescue them? Is it possible to get, for all of these segments defined, not just in this area, but everywhere, to get the number of accidents within that segment and the type of accidents, so that we can have an idea of whether widening the shoulders really helps, or is it a backup when the school buses are out?
Right.
What are the issues?
It's a good question, and what we try to do is really highlight the crash density, but trust me, it can be broken down any way you want it. We could show fatalities, we could show just property damage, we could show the causation or the type of crash, whether it was a right angle, whether it was a fixed object off the road to the right, to the left, any way we can do that. When we do what's called a roadway safety assessment, we do a deep dive. We start at the high level, like what you've seen, the crash density, where the hot spots, and then we start to hone in on there to see what the patterns are and the causation, so then we can apply the fix. If you don't have cars running off the road, it's probably not the best investment to create wide shoulders. If they're drifting off the road and coming head-on, you've got a little bit of a different situation to tackle. But yes, to answer your question.
So, since it's informal, I thought maybe piggyback on that, I looked at your heat map and you can't really tell, right, again, that's density.
Sure.
I get that. But I know some of the accidents that happen along there, some of the bad accidents are near the bridge, near the couple of places where there's a narrow bridge, and I know probably 6 months, a year ago, there was a real bad accident there. And I think there've been a couple there since I've lived out here, at least a couple that I'm aware of. So, this goes back to my global question. If we're widening that road, are you figuring that we're gonna widen the bridges there where is that a given?
Ideally, you would want to widen the bridge, but again, back to your, and it's a good point, are we really having that accident pattern there, or is it along the rest of the corridor? So you would target certainly the corridor, if that's where it is, at pinch points
Right.
on certain
And if
roads.
the bad accidents are happening at the bridge, why do we spend all the money widening everything?
Cor-
up the
Correct,
bridge?
Exactly.
correct. So you get down at a targeted level. I mean, these are longer corridors that we're showing here. Typically, you wouldn't build them all at once. You would figure out where the priority is and then build out from there.
So my global question before I forget it is, and Mr. Kilduff pointed out that we're gonna need to update the transportation CIP from the 2000, because it was based on 2005. And you all had a slide, I think it was slide 70, or no, it was slide 23, where there was, we've basically taken off the table of 100 million in 2005 dollars, 200 million in 2017 dollars. So I'm kind of excited that if you're able to look at what's taken off, the cost of what's taken off the table, do you have a cost of what you're talking about adding?
We're going to work towards that. We are working on that, yes, but that's an important question that we have to answer. And I think we're getting close to being able to cost these specific recommendations out, get your feedback so we have more intelligence to cost those out.
Well, some of my feedback's gonna be based on the cost.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that.
But I appreciate it, but I hope we can get maybe some more detailed crash data along, particularly where you're talking about widening a long
Sure.
stretch.
Sure.
That might,
Yeah,
Okay.
I gotta just caution the board, if we're gonna do that on each project to that level of scrutiny, this plan is intended to be global, intended to be broad. When we get down into funding sectors or taking on projects or making improvements, that's when we start to widen these down. So if we're gonna plan a project that may not be done till 2039 in this process, you will not get through this process. And so there's gonna have to be some level of balance.
and Mr. Badesky, I'm asking because they told us they took 200 million off. I'm like, they got the data to do something, so I know that's a ballpark. It's gotta be, I mean, it's around 200 million, it's a round number. That's what I'm not looking for project by project cost, but I'm hoping if you have data to do what you did to removal of across the whole county, I'd like to think you can give us a ballpark, or using whatever modeling you used.
Yep. We will do that.
If I may add to that, my next question was going to be, we've talked about how in some cases having a plan allows us to work with developers to acquire rights of way and so on when things are approved. Can that apply also to VDOT when they're repaving? I know that along Route 6, a few years ago, they repaved from Sandy Hook west to the high school. And in doing that, they actually expanded the shoulder. And I think that's when we run into issues with bridges. They get to a bridge and they expand alongside, but not the bridge, because that is obviously more difficult. And so then the traffic, just having to go through a funnel, creates some issues. Can that be done? And is that something that we could, I know a lot of times VDOT comes and starts paving, and I don't think we even know when they're doing it, but is it possible to present these things to VDOT in a way that they know, hey, we're planning on widening this. If you're going to repave, you need to look at these plans and figure out what that's going to take, and do it at that time rather than come and repave and then we come and want to widen it later and it's just being done. So is that a possibility? Is that something we can get out of these plans?
I don't have the answer as far as how VDOT would respond to it. The path at which I'd approach that question is through the district engineer, and likely the resident engineer as well. Certainly, VDOT's going to review this plan, and the more communication you have when they're putting that pavement schedule together. What I do know, they are looking at other things. The commissioner and others are really intent on improving safety. So, and we've worked on some paving schedule projects, and they look at incremental, low-cost safety improvements, signing, pavement markings, types of things that we can do, rumble strips that we can do. I don't want to address the answer for them, but I think that conversation can be entertained. I don't know what the answer would be, though.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
go ahead.
yes, Ms. Lassamet?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm sorry. Go
It's
ahead.
good to see your face.
Okay.
So I'm still concerned about the multimodal aspect, the widening for multimodal, and I don't know really why we're doing that, frankly. But is that safety? Is that part of safety, and why is that in there?
A lot of the multimodal that you'll see, certainly when you get over to the eastern side, is there's some connection to where we know that there's frequency.
We're talking about the west right here.
Right, right. In this particular point, I think this is part of a bike plan at some point. I think that's the multimodal connection on this piece. Is that correct? No? Okay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
really don't see the point, frankly, because you're gonna widen, but not widen the bridges,
Yeah.
and so you're creating these bottlenecks again. It just,
Some of the aspect is recognizing with that wider shoulder, and I understand your concern, is in widening that shoulder, are you attracting them? But it does, for those that are using it, it does provide that opportunity for those, whether it's pedestrians or bicyclists, to be on the shoulder. And it gives them that safe passage on the shoulder. There's a lot of areas where there's not much shoulder area, and that's what the point of this is. And it's also part of the safety aspect, as we have identified. As I mentioned earlier, that shoulder provides a more forgiving area for a vehicle that strays out of the travel path. So it's a little bit twofold. I guess the secondary benefit, it does provide an opportunity, though, for that multimodal accommodation.
so if this plan were to be adopted, this section of it, and 20 years from now, when we actually do the work, or 15 or whatever, that still can be adjusted, is that right? I mean, this is not like cast in stone, this is what we're gonna do. It's a plan.
Every project, when it comes forward, will be evaluated at what the current standard is at that time, and I'm not saying that they change significantly, but what the need is, and the design specifics will be built in then and considered in. If there are other safety problems that are out there, with new data, we would be looking at that. Maybe this is a road where we have more multimodal type of use, pedestrians, bikes, whatever the case may be.
No
Or not.
pedestrians.
Or not, or not,
None.
or not.
Zero.
Or not, understand.
Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts? Let me just weigh in with some general comments here. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if there's a certain level of traffic and the road is defined as a certain type of road, collector, arterial, what have you, that VDOT says if it's that kind of a road with that kind of traffic, this is our standard build. This is what it should look like. So that's what this plan says, is if you have this traffic and this type of road, this is the way it should look. So it's the ideal. Now again, this is the benefit, the safety benefits, the connectivity benefits. It doesn't get to the cost yet. And the prioritization that we were asking about earlier is going to be, once you have the cost and the benefit, you can look at the different costs and benefit. If one costs too much and very little benefit, it goes to the bottom, et cetera. And that's where we would come in terms of actual projects of assigning
Gotcha.
cost versus benefit. And I think we saw that on 3 of the slides, the ones that are currently funded, the ones that are partially funded, the ones that are to be funded in the future. Those are our current priorities as we're working it down. The first one's already fully funded. We said those on a cost-benefit basis. Traffic lights at 288, Hope Church, the safety, the connectivity, the flow of traffic. There's where your big benefit is for the reasonable cost. So I think what we're doing here today is acknowledging that these types of roads have these types of labels and these types of traffics, and that in the ideal, they would be constructed with these kind of standards. And that as we go forward, if there's opportunities to make decisions, that this would kind of guide decision-making going forward, but it's certainly not set in stone or, is a decision being
That's
made
correct.
today. Is that
That's correct.
a fair
It's an
summary?
accurate statement, yeah.
Okay. Based on that, we've managed to get through one slide in about 20 minutes. I'm hoping that
The rest of it-
diatribe
some
will
of
help
those are
speed
universal
things up a little bit,
questions.
yes.
Yeah, they were universal.
Okay, so with that said, if we can maybe move on from the first slide to the second slide and keep going here. I guess the same comments were made on this one, so, Ms. Lascolette, is this
Identical.
pretty similar?
Right, identical.
Same kind of comments,
Yeah,
okay?
it's not-
Speeding along to the next one. The next one. Yep. Okay, now we're in the central service area.
Yeah, I mean, I
Comments on
think
this one?
that intersection at Sandy Hook Road and Whitehall Road is pretty bad, and it's getting busier. There's a new subdivision going in with 2 new subdivisions with 50 homes or so each. And they've already added traffic to the intersection, even though there's only 1 home built so far, but all the truck traffic,
Right.
contractors. So I think, I don't know about a roundabout, but I think repairs or changes to that intersection with the rain this year, VDOT only cut the grass a couple of times as usual. And there was a point there where you couldn't really see the traffic coming south on 522 because of the grass on that curve. I think the owner finally came out and cut it, but, so I think that definitely is and we've talked a lot about the fairground, extension and interchange. So I'm not sure that,
So you're generally in agreement, this intersection needs attention,
Yeah.
and the other one, the cut-through is fine as well.
yeah,
Okay.
you know, we've talked a lot about our roundabout and our intersection. I don't know if anybody has any questions of it, or
Other comments on
Central project, or just
central
those two
projects?
slides?
Well, yeah, these two slides initially.
No, I think we all, if you've driven the Whitehall Road, we all know that. I think when we get to the next stage and talk about prioritizing, I think the safety is a problem there. I've been behind a couple of wrecks over the years there. It's a very dangerous intersection. Not,
Okay.
fortunately, not super high speeds, but it's a problem. So, yeah, that'll, no questions about that one.
They would end up having to cost out the different alternatives as well to see what would be the best bang for the buck in there, but it needs some attention is why it's being circled, and that's certainly justified. Other comments or thoughts on those two slides?
Just talking about Sandy Hook around there, is there, yeah, there's no, that road, there's no reason to look at widening Sandy Hook?
Based on the empirical data, no, from the traffic volumes and
Okay.
then from the safety data that we saw.
Okay.
and that may be, that's something that I don't know that we need to, I think the county already does, but any new subdivision, because I know there's a couple of other large properties that are, one just sold, another one is probably coming on the market soon. There's a couple of other neighborhoods already approved. And I think it's important that when those plans come forward, that they have right turn and left turn lanes, because that eases some of the pressure on the two-lane road if a car turning can move over. Because otherwise I can see issues with the two-lane going forward over the next few years.
I think sometimes Sandy Hook seems like it's gonna have a heavier load than Haydensville Fife in terms of,
I would say definitely,
you know.
definitely.
But anyway, the data, and again, your data, it is what it is, but do you take into account neighborhoods that are online or potentially going online up and down that street?
Yeah, so again, we've used the socioeconomic data from the capital impact study that has the growth of the population and the employment. So I don't know for sure if specific developments were taken into consideration for each of those, but that was the data that we used.
Okay, that would be, because if you're just taking global population data, that doesn't tell us anything about the load on a particular street.
So, well, to go further, so you have the global data, but then the model breaks the data into zones. So within Sandy Hook, it could be, multiple zones that breaks that data further and then assigns the traffic based on that population and employment data within that zone.
And those zones did anticipate those projected developments, that maybe not something that would have came in the past couple weeks, but the ones that we knew of that were longer term, that aren't out of the ground yet.
Do y'all, your company purchase this data from a company that provides it, or how does that work?
You mean the socioeconomic data?
Yeah, and all the data that you use to drive your model?
So the regional model comes from VDOT and the TPO. So they provide the model out to all of the counties, and there's multiple regional models throughout the state of Virginia. So that is given out. It's validated. All that information is consistent for everyone. The socioeconomic data, again, was updated based on the capital impact projections that were done as part of that study, the capital impact study. So we used that data and put it into the model to determine the future traffic projections. The safety data comes specifically from VDOT, and that comes from the police records, and then it's synthesized and gone through and validated for all of the crashes.
Okay, thanks.
One more on
Sure.
that. The Fairground
Wait.
Road,
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Evans, on the first two, the intersection and the cut-through, I think we're okay on those. If that's okay, then we move forward to slide 37, and then I think that's where you
yeah,
are,
that's
right?
where I'm going.
Okay, just want to bring the citizens along with us, that's all.
So, in the Fairground Road work between Sandy Hook Road and Broad Street Road, I was surprised not to see, but maybe it's all considered as part of the widening of Fairground Road. But that intersection at Fairground and 250 has been an accident-prone intersection for years. Some of the changes that we requested have been done now, like I think now it's got a flashing stop sign that alerts people early. That seems to, knock on wood, seems to have reduced the number of accidents. I haven't heard any complaints from Ms. Adams in a while. But I was surprised not to see something there like a proposed traffic light or something else. I know when they did the study between there and Cardwell Road, I think they had proposed a roundabout, which may be overkill there, but anyway, I was surprised about that. I'm not seeing that specifically.
Yeah, we can certainly look at the data immediate to that intersection. It did not flash up, certainly, but when we look at these links and how they terminate on either end, that's definitely a consideration of how is that new intersection going to be. Certainly if we're adding lanes and adding capacity to a road now intersecting, what does that look like? I'd agree, it appears that some of the minor improvements have helped. But again, we can certainly check the data right at the intersection to see if there's anything there.
That whole
Again,
corridor, I think when the last time
Yeah.
I looked at the data, it was second. If you looked at Oilville Road, Cardwell Road, and Fairgrounds Road together, which is what we asked
Sure.
VDOT to do
Yeah.
that study, I think it was second to 288 and 250 in number of, I think, in my head, I've got like 37 accidents in a period of 5 years. Like I said, I think it's reduced a little bit at that intersection, but it's still something that we should at least consider when Fairgrounds Road is widened.
Yeah, and I guess on that, if there's very low volume of traffic, but a very high incident rate, they may call for a certain type of improvement as opposed to a volumetric improvement, which may be a light, because I know VDOT has very strict warrant requirements to install a light, and it's volumetric is one of the key determinants, so that volume may not be there, but the safety is certainly there, so maybe there's something that we could look at in terms of safety enhancements.
sure.
The other thing, Board, I'll just draw your attention here. This is one of those for discussion, 3-lane level of service D and 4-lane level of service B. So I'll entertain thoughts on weighing in on whether 3 or 4 lanes and any discussion along those lines.
I'll go quickly. I have a question on, and I think Mr. Kilduff answered it at the end of his presentation, but the level of service numbers that are before us are based on 2040 load?
Yes.
Okay.
Or you mean on this slide? Yes.
On any of the slides where the for discussion says
Yes. Yes.
3-lane level of
2040.
service,
Mhm.
4-lane level of service score. That's based on what you're projecting to be the 2040 load.
Correct.
Again, I just don't see how this, well, first of all, I question why we would support, or why we would accept anything that leaves us with a level service of D. I mean, I have a hard time supporting something that's gonna leave us, even at 22 years from now, right, 21 years from now. But I don't know that it's not gonna happen sooner on Fairground Road. I mean, we're talking about the comprehensive plan, what it calls for in the courthouse. I'm meeting with an owner and a developer tomorrow about them talking about a subdivision in the courthouse area. There are things potentially coming online in this area. And that is the road to get from anywhere, really, I mean, unless you're south, but if you're if you're over in Henrico and you're, north, if you're closer to 64, this is the way to get to Goochland.
Yes.
And it's a dangerous road as it is. Some of the turns and curves primarily. And then we're gonna put we're recommending on the next slide 39, we're looking at a 4-lane undivided roadway off of 64, just, like about a half a mile or less from the entrance of Fairground. Now, I know that obviously feeds some traffic going back towards Richmond, into neighborhoods off Broad Street in Oilville and points east. And I guess some people are gonna keep going west on Broad, but the concentration of the traffic is going to be coming to Goochland. So I would think at least a 3-lane, and I kinda wanna be comfortable that the data says that, I'd support a 4-lane, and I'm hesitant about a 3-lane, cause I think it'll be, soon it'll be a level of service D sooner than 2040, unless the economy tanks.
Okay, I'm gonna mark that down as a 4-lane.
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
Could've just cut to the chase.
Well,
Yeah.
4 lanes, please.
If I may just make
Yes,
a
sir.
comment. I think this is the one where the cost would be very valuable to us in a decision, because I think the topography there is very difficult. There's not a whole lot of shoulder. So I think 3 lanes might be difficult. 4 lanes will probably be very difficult. So this is where, as we make our plans, and I agree with John, I think this is gonna be maybe 2030, if not sooner. But just because of the traffic, the amount of traffic coming through to town, and with all the new proposals that are in the works. So that one, I think, will probably move up to, and I know for the long term, we're not gonna be able to come up with a cost for something out in 2040, but as we prioritize some of the early, the next 5 years or so, we ought to try to have a better cost estimate so we can put it in our capital impact model and use it for figuring out what the real cost of development are.
So put that down as a maybe.
As a let us know what it costs.
He said he agreed with John.
Okay, certainly cost dependent, and also the volumes will be market driven depending on development. So the timing will be driven by the markets, and the cost will be what it is, and we'll have to make a decision on whether or not to go ahead and pull the trigger. But for planning purposes, you recusing yourself?
No, for planning purposes, I agree with John
Okay,
that
all right,
we
fair
ought to be
enough.
thinking 4 versus 3.
4 with an asterisk.
4 with an asterisk.
Okay. Other thoughts?
So, Mr. Chairman, so I've just got a question. So we're talking about the interstate Oilville Road south 4 lanes. And that dead ends at Broad Street, so you have to go right or left. So are we widening 250 there? Or we've got 2 lanes turning into 1 if they're going west?
So it's an ideal spot for, as the traffic that's coming from the interstate to coming to Broad, it's gonna be 2 lanes in either direction. One would be a dedicated right turn lane, the other a dedicated left turn lane, as it comes to the T. So the right turning traffic is gonna go west on Broad, left turning traffic would go east on Broad.
Okay, I thought we were talking about 4 lanes on Oilville Road.
Correct. So it'd be
Yeah.
2 in each
two
direction.
lanes
2
in
on each
either
side.
direction.
This way.
One would become a turn lane. So you have the 2 lanes.
Right, I'm
When you come
traveling
to-
south.
Yep,
To
yep.
Broad.
Broad.
When you get to Broad, one would become the left and one would become the right.
Okay, so it's only 2 lanes on Oilville Road then?
No, you got 2 lanes
You
going
got
the other way
south.
towards the interstate.
Oh, okay, just the southbound is,
Southbound
okay,
is-
gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, and I concur on Fairground Road, it is a horrible road. We either need to find a way around it, or we need to do 4 lanes. And as expensive as that's gonna be, and horrible, I mean, it's an awful road, and the traffic's not gonna get any better. So I really think we need to think about 4s. The ramifications of that are immense, I know. Properties right close to the road, homes close to the road, that kind of thing, and the topography is awful. But I mean, I'd love to find a way around it myself, but 3 lanes not gonna cut it.
Okay, we had 4 with an asterisk for cost, now we have a 4 with an asterisk for another way around. Which,
I mean,
if
I don't know what that would be, but we either got to take traffic off that road, or we gotta widen it.
Yeah,
My
understood, thank you. Mr. Minnick,
I'm good.
you're good?
Concur. Yep, I agree
Oh,
with him.
concur, okay.
I think the minimum standards for the roads should be LOSC, and anything that falls below that, I think,
How can we plan that?
if it's, I don't know how we would reasonably want anybody to plan for a level of service D. So even though the condition is approaching unstable, or whatever the definition is, but I think it's just easier to say, look, our minimum standard is a road should be planned and built at a level C. If it's gonna go south of C, then we're basically wasting our money, because we're gonna have to do it again.
Exactly.
So, that's just my general kind of rule here. Anything that I'm looking at that has a level of service of D is not adequate, all things being considered. So, that's my opinion.
Okay, all right.
The
Well,
other
it-
piece of information we don't know at this point is what's the current level of service on all of these? So if you know them as we go through them, that would be helpful to me.
That was on one of
They
the
are
other
on
charts.
slide
Yeah.
20.
Existing
It's in the
condition.
beginning of your
Yeah.
packet. It should be.
Slide 12.
Okay.
Slide 12. Ms. Oskar, it's on page 6 of your package.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what she was asking.
Gotcha.
To see,
Yeah, we got it.
where we're starting with.
Remember, these don't include the growth conditions that are applied.
What do you mean?
The existing levels are with today's conditions.
Correct, right.
The future projections include plan development and growth and impacts to them.
Gotcha.
And I guess probably what I'm realizing we're doing is we think of level of service, but you're just really talking about congestion, you're talking about safety when you're talking about level of service.
When we're looking at it, it's the operational that is not looking at the safety
It's not
aspect of
looking
it,
at
correct?
safety. So I think sometimes, I'm connecting safety sometimes when I know that's not a fair comparison.
Right.
But anyway.
Right.
Well, the reason we're doing a major thoroughfare plan is because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
And if we adopt a plan that has D or F, we're actually planning to fail
Yep.
while we're planning.
Right.
So I guess that's my way of saying I concur with my 4 colleagues up here. All right, so there's our discussion for that slide. Thank you very much,
All right.
Board, for your participation in that. We can go ahead and speed it forward to, well, we've kind of wrapped the Oilville Road in a little bit already. Is that anything?
Broad Street and Cardwell,
Yeah.
I'm all in favor. That needs to be, that's dangerous coming out of Cardwell.
It's kind of an angled intersection.
Yeah, it's site problems, it's just the way it's designed. That definitely would get, again, maybe not a level of service thing, but a safety. And I think that's what you have, safety,
Yes, and.
is the reason.
And that wouldn't be necessarily cost prohibitive either, because really just realigning that. Mr. Alves, that same thing?
Yeah, I think it's just a confusing intersection. People go right to turn left and go left to turn right. And you see people, once they turn off of Broad Street, they think they have the right of way. Somebody going in the other direction so
Sure.
definitely needs work. It feels like this was one that could be done as part of road repairs, but
Right,
it doesn't, so we need to have it in our plan.
okay. Ms. Osklet, Mr. Minnick, anything else on Oilville or Broad Street at Cardwell Road?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll continue to move on then. I'm going to slide 42. There we go. Okay. River Road West.
I'll just adopt what Mr. Minnick said. I said, I can't see, he put it very articulately, why would we plan for level service D?
Any Dissenting opinions? Who wants to write the dissenting opinion
for
on
me.
this?
Not gonna say-
Yeah.
'Cause this is another one of those four discussion, 3-lane level of service D or 4-lane level of service B.
That D thing only worked for me in high school.
Mr. Alvarez, your mic's still on. Okay, so I guess we're all in consensus there. We want to plan for at least level of service C. In this case, we would need a 4-lane to get us to level of service B and get us out of the level of service D.
And then could we sacrifice, if, when the time came, the multimodal part of it to get another traffic lane? I'm throwing it out there.
Now we're in the part of the county where multimodal is good.
All right?
No, I've asked what, and I asked at the community meeting what was meant by multimodal, and I don't think it's very defined at this level, is it? I mean, it's,
No, I guess it could either be a sidewalk or a wide shoulder or a dedicated parallel lane or a variety of different things. It's
but
not just
the
one.
proposal at this level doesn't spell that out, right?
Right. I mean, there's nobody gonna be walking that in the next 40 years. I can tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And I
not
was thinking
walkable.
cyclists, you see cyclists,
back
you do
road.
see cyclists on Route 6.
We
and-
do.
And that's,
Yep.
But if we had 2 lanes of traffic, then you could get over. Anyway,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, if it was a 4, excuse me, if it was a, could you go to the next slide? I think it shows, so if you did a 4-lane, this only shows a 2-lane, doesn't it? Or is it a 3-lane? It doesn't show the 4-lane because that was one of the other options.
No, we only did the one that was modeled.
Okay, so the idea would be, to your point, Ms. LaScalette, if there's 4 lanes and a shoulder, if you've got bicycles coming along, do you really need the multimodal on top of all that in this particular section? And that'd be something we'd visit at the
That's my
time.
question.
Okay.
Right.
We'd visit that at the time. Okay? So it sounds like there's consensus around the 4-lane there as well. Okay? That brings us to the east end.
Now the fun begins.
Okay, Teco Creek Parkway. So really the only difference here is we're adding the multimodal as a suggestion for that parkway.
And widening it to 4-lane. Today it's a 2-lane section.
But you're not changing from the two, I think you're
Right,
not,
right.
not changing
Right.
from 2005.
And it doesn't show level of service here, but that would, the level of, the 4-lane is required to get us into the ABC category.
That's correct. We only called those out when we weren't able to achieve that.
Okay.
So only real difference is the multimodal, right?
Would you be willing to sacrifice if we needed to? Remember, I'm jumping ahead.
Let me think about that. So where is this connecting to on both ends? This is Hockett and
Lockett and Hermitage Road.
Yeah,
Hermitage.
so the intersection
Goes
circle
into
is
a-
at the
yeah, on
Hermitage,
Hockett, or on Hermitage, it goes into a T intersection.
at the Hermitage Country Club. That's what's circled here.
Yeah, my only concern here is that we would be then dumping a lot of traffic out onto Hockett Road,
Right. Right.
conceivably from Tuckahoe Creek Parkway that's now a 4-lane. Granted, there's residential properties under development there on either side of the road. But, I mean, for me, looking at this as kind of a notional plan out to 2040, the rest of, I guess I'm just going to go along with a data-driven model. If this thing indicates by 2040 that it needs to be a 4-lane road, I don't know what else to.
But it may not be your
I don't know.
top priority depending on the volumes that actually
I don't think,
occur.
I mean, certainly not at this point. More of my concern, as I mentioned, would be an intersection, what the intersection looks like at Hermitage Tuckahoe Creek. And also the intersection.
I was just gonna
at-
say, you've,
Yeah, the
in the past,
intersection
you've,
at,
in the
at
past,
Hockett,
you've raised
yeah.
concerns about Hockett.
Yeah, and the same, it'd be the same on the other end.
Yep.
Intersection, but you have that for other reasons. You have the intersection problem at Hockett and Tuckahoe Creek for other reasons. You have that for Hockett Road.
Yep.
Traffic, so,
Because we know there'll be a pickup in traffic on Hockett, and if there's a traffic pickup here, we may need some intersection improvement there.
yeah.
What was the data driven on the Hockett and Tuckahoe Creek Parkway intersection? Was there any deemed improvements there, just basically the other end of this red line?
The model only does the roadways, it doesn't get down into the intersection connections. That would definitely need to be studied further, so.
Yeah, again, it was recognizing that Tuckahoe is 2 lanes today, then it goes to 4 lanes. So targeting the intersection of Hermitage and Tuckahoe, we obviously have to do something there. You know, the east end of Tuckahoe being 4 feels like a reasonable marriage, but you still want to see how that's going to function with that added traffic on there, making sure that you got the proper turn lanes and proper traffic control.
Yeah, because if you implement this, traveling east on Tuckahoe Creek Parkway, if you got 4 lanes, so there's 2 lanes traveling east, it's 4 lanes on the other side of Hockett already. So you got 2 lanes going to 2 lanes and increased traffic on Hockett, and right now you've just got stop signs there. So I don't know how you'd have 4 lanes going straight across with a lot of traffic on Hockett with just a stop sign. I don't know if this is contemplating increased traffic on Tuckahoe Creek as well. So
Yeah.
Is there any downside to putting a circle around Hockett?
Not at all.
And
That-
saying, hey, let's
That's what we're here
keep this
for.
in mind
Yeah,
too?
yeah, no, that's good.
You okay with that, Mr. Menick?
Yeah,
or,
no, I think they both have to be, I don't think they can be, you know, an addition, an expansion like this without addressing, or without having those intersections
Right.
previously addressed is probably the way to do it. I mean, this would be, to me, the tail kind of wagging the dog here, and then we'd be chasing the intersection corrections or the fixes later, while still, you know, dumping a lot of traffic out there. So I'd rather do the intersections first than the gaps in the roadway in between.
Good point.
There is a kind of a line of sight issue as you come in west and you look north on Hockett. You don't see a lot of traffic there. So anyway, yeah, let's just,
Yeah.
if you're okay with that, board, we'll add that circle. Okay. Anything else on that one? Otherwise, we keep moving.
I just one other question on that. When we looked at this, did we look at the additional traffic that's being dumped on the Hockett Road and what the impacts are there?
The model is a whole network, so it looks at all of those roadway connections.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so it doesn't degrade the service for Hockett
No, no.
to dump that traffic on it? Thank you.
Okay, go to 47, yeah. Comments on Rockville Road?
Yeah, again, I think, you know, Rockville's, you know, we've had a lot of discussion, and there's also been some development pressure on that between Rockville and Mannequin roads. And I think we know, obviously, it's clearly highlighted here that, you know, that road is a safety concern. It has a lot of sightline issues and, you know, treacherous travel. So again, in my mind, if I'm looking at, you know, a priority road situation potentially requiring a fix, Rockville again's another one. You know, it gets added to the list.
Okay. And this just says widen right away. We're not adding lanes or increasing capacity. We're just widening the shoulders. The multimodal, that wide shoulder may be part of that, or it may be something else.
Yeah, that's all commercial and industrial through that area. So again, I don't know who's gonna be walking that.
Yeah, again, it provides the opportunity with that shoulder to be used as needed.
But we'd be willing to sacrifice that if we,
rode my bike up there.
Yeah. Take your life in your hands.
Okay, so I guess the consensus is that we need that to be on our plan for improvements for at least right away. Okay?
Well, the only improvement in the plan is to widen the right-of-way.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think this is getting too much into the weeds, but it seems to me it ought to probably be 4 lanes until you get to the end of the industrial area. I mean, if you know, but again, we don't have the data that says we should, but I think when we get to that point, maybe when we get to looking at projects, maybe that can get thrown into the mix. I think that's probably at this level, because I think, Bob, you were pointing out, I feel the same way, and I didn't want to say anything this time because level of service is fine, but safety, which is not, doesn't title level of a service, is a concern
Right.
on that road. And if, again, when you start loading it up with expansions like we're gonna see at, Parkside? Is it called Parkside? So more homes coming on. Now, again, they probably tend to go Pontchartract and then come back down Rockville. But the data is telling us the level of service is fine and there are no problems, so. I think, I support this, but I do have pause that I don't know that this is enough, but I think time will tell us if we need to do something immediately around the interstate.
Well, yeah, certainly if a safety issue arises, we wouldn't wait for market-driven development. We'd address that at the time, I would think.
Yeah,
We've done
potential
that in the past.
bottleneck there as well. If you're coming north on Ashland, it's 4 lanes, divergent diamond through the intersection, and then back to 2 lanes.
Are we talking about the same road? We're talking Rockville Road.
Rockville is
has
different.
Conditions than Ashland.
Oh, no, we're not. I'm talking Ashland. Yeah, you're right.
I'm sorry. It's the
Yeah,
next
you're
one.
right.
That's the
right.
next one.
That's the next slide. Got ahead.
Okay.
But you're,
There we go.
Okay,
yeah,
There's
Rockville
Ashland.
does not have an intersection. Rockville is, just has a bridge across.
right.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
So any other, we've already talked about Rockville needing the expanded right-of-ways, wider shoulders, and that's in the plan. Next slide was Ashland Road, Broad Street to 64. We've already talked about the intersection improvements at 64 that'll help. And then in this one, it's the multimodal and the fact, we have a discussion to make here too, 4-lane versus 6.
Yeah, this is even level E. I mean, one shy of the worst score we can get. I think we planned for B.
But we've already submitted this application, right, for the 4 lanes?
Smart scale?
Yeah. Is this the one?
We did the interchange improvement. I don't know if we did the widening.
interchange. I don't think we've done the
We haven't done the widening? Oh, okay. It's just interchange. Right, okay, thank you.
So I guess, again, I'll look for input on discussion, whether 4-lane or 6-lane.
Plan for level service B, it might be my,
Yeah, I
suggestion.
would,
And boy, that's hard to believe in a 6-lane
Yeah, it is hard to
road.
believe.
Goochland.
Didn't even do
Well,
Broad
already-
Street.
but, I mean, if you've been, well, obviously, if you've traveled on that any time from, 6 in the morning till 10 or 11, you're.
Yeah, well, 2
you're
lanes is not
ton
cutting
of,
it,
ton of
for sure.
truck, so.
This was
I
also
can see it.
identified in the arterial management study,
Yes, yes.
if I'm not mistaken. And I think that plan was for 6 lanes with sidewalks,
To nowhere.
if I'm not mistaken. 4 lanes with sidewalks?
that's in the AMP.
It's in the AMP, it's in the AMP
And when was
plan.
that done?
About a year and a half ago.
There you go.
Was
Yeah,
it?
okay.
So it's already gone
Seems like a
back
year and a
up to
half.
6.
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
Quick question, though. For the discussion, 4 versus 6, the third bullet point, though, says, doesn't include the impact of the interchange. Would the interchange improve the level of service, or would it likely improve the level of service on this road? And if so, would it take us out of the E and F with a 4-lane, or, you see where I'm going with this? I mean,
That's a great question. Unfortunately, the model doesn't get to that level to be able to interpret what type of node, if you will, or intersection improvement, what that really looks like. But the answer is, with that type of design that's being considered, the DDI, it will lengthen out the impact to the north and the south. And likely that traffic has settled itself out in 2 lanes in either direction or 4 lanes can adequately be served. One thing that we often do with these plans, because this is a point of contention, is it 4 or is it 6? Our professional advice is usually to reserve the right-of-way for the 6.
Right.
Okay, look to preserve that, then it makes it easier when that need is tripped. Now, the challenge in the county here is with this interchange, and interchanges aren't coming cheap anymore, that this is gonna be a primary interchange for a while until what happens down at Oilville. When is that? Okay, if that doesn't come online soon, then it just continues to burden this that much longer. So the advice, again, reserve that extra wide 6 at least, and then build what we call 4 on 6. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's more like a 4 with wider right-of-way for
Absolutely.
enough to
Exactly.
add 2 more lanes.
Exactly.
Plus, I mean, it's hard to imagine 6 lanes coming into the Hockett Road realignment where there's 2.
Exactly, that's, and well, in the bridges, I mean, the intersections.
Of course, it mainly feeds Broad Street, but,
Yeah, you'll have traffic going both ways on Broad
Yeah.
Street.
yeah.
Yep.
But
So now, we're back to what
There you go, now.
I've got the right place now, and we're still doing the same thing, 2 lanes.
Right,
So this is interesting. In 2005, it was a 4-lane plan for north Ashland Road, north of 64. But the numbers don't support.
So clarification on that. And Todd did an awesome job with all that. It's very dynamic, and we did make a change. Apologize, that really should be, for 2040, should be a 4-lane.
4-lane.
Undivided,
Oh,
just for clarification.
Yeah.
okay,
And the results are shown as a 4-lane.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
So
right,
the
okay.
resultant level of service
I
does
knew I
reflect
was thinking
4-lane.
ahead that
Yep, that's a good catch.
I'm all good now.
Yep. So this becomes even more complicated. This becomes even more complicated, obviously, because, under making its way through is an expanded development in Parkside, and the potential access points on and off of Ashland Road, and potential pending development on the Henrico side with H.H. Hunt, and potential residential development on the Hanover side of the intersection at Pouncey Track and Ashland, and also contemplation of additional residential development or some development on the western side of Ashland Road, a little south of Pouncey Track again. So 4 may not be enough, because this study may not contemplate those potentials with H.H. Hunt, and any other future development that could occur in 5 years or 10 years or so.
Maybe-
So,
Maybe back to the point of reserve right away for 6. And this, I just noticed, going back to the current level of service, this is one of 2 little red roads.
Yep.
That are already LOSD, so.
So the correction was, this is a 4-lane undivided currently as proposed in the 2040, and the
may
discussion
need
is.
to be 6.
So we should do a 4-lane undivided with really wide right-of-ways.
supersized.
Super.
Supersized,
No multimodal on this one. What's up with
No
that?
multimodal in this?
yeah.
How'd we miss
I don't know
that?
how they missed that one.
Nobody wants
It's
to walk.
industrial, there's a lot of industrial traffic.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question, maybe for Mr. Bodeski and Joanne, and if we go with this plan and it says 4 lanes, but we kind of think that it may be 6, and let's say a developer wants to develop a property across from Parkside off of Ashland Road, how do we negotiate rights of way? Can we say, no, we really want 6, even though we've adopted it at 4?
Yep.
I encourage you to recommend to your consultant to consider 6, because this is going to be a guiding document that will drive those conversations.
Then we can always face it back.
Because I think Mr. Minnick is right, and I think another concern there will be that intersection just north of there is Hanover intersection. So hopefully our plan can kind of connect to theirs, like, what is it, plug and play, like, like new equipment. But, because otherwise we'll be putting a nice road onto a,
Well, we're putting,
Broken.
yeah, we'll be putting on a
Right.
six-lane road into Pouncey Tract, east and west, that's basically 2. It may be,
Yeah.
3 running westbound, but northbound on, if you continue through that intersection on Ashland Road, is two lanes all the way into.
Yeah, and I guess, to your point, assuming the future growth and assuming full implementation of this plan, the level of service on this stretch of road is still only an E? I get that from a map on page 74. Yeah, if you do this as a 4-lane, it's still level of E? If I go to page, well,
Oh, no.
I don't know if you can.
For north of the interchange,
Mm-hmm.
it is level of service, I think, B. Between Ashland and 64, it's an E.
That's with the 4 lanes.
Yeah.
So, okay, I got it. But above 64, it's
It's 4.
It's green, okay. This map was too small to see that, okay, thank you. But that goes to whether we need a 6 or a 4. Did we update this every 5 years? So
Yeah.
5 years from now, we'll know better? Or do you want to just go 6 now and,
Right, well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think the community and the boards and the staff will, I mean, reviewing this plan every 5 years is gonna be mandatory.
should we guide them
because-
towards 6 now or 4 now, or
Yeah,
what's
I
your
mean,
thought
it's
on that?
just gonna,
You guys have thoughts on 4 versus 6 now, or?
But 4 keeps us in the green, is that right? That's what we're saying, 4 would keep us.
4 makes it green,
future.
assuming everything's fully implemented and all the growth happens.
4 with dedicated,
So it gets you to ABC, 4
Right
gets you to
away from-
ABC.
But I think, consistent with Mr. Minnick's comments of earlier, this may not have been considering some of the other north and westbound, well, actually eastbound impacts that, just as we talked about the landfill earlier, maybe something we take back between this meeting and the planning commission and discuss
Yeah.
what those kinds of loads may have done to your model.
Yeah, so the data driven right now says 4, we can do 4, but we can take another look before we adopt this.
Yeah,
Take a closer
So we
look,
have more time.
maybe we ask staff to advise us
Update.
on that. Yeah.
Okay.
update the assumptions in the data. And then we'll have a data-driven decision whether to go to 6 as opposed to just a guess.
and can we find out what, I mean, this is right where Hanover and Henrico come together. Can we find out what, or do we know what their plans are? I mean,
I think I just told you.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
That intersection seems to me to be a failing intersection, and I know, Ms.
It
Hunter,
is.
I don't know if you had a chance to ask Hanover, but I know at the
Yeah.
last meeting, I saw Ms. Hunter, and I said, I'd love to know the status of that intersection, and, because it seems to me to be failing. When you go by there in the morning, it
It
seems,
is.
my definition of failing, but,
Yeah.
um, okay.
At Pouncey Track.
questions problem.
So
Yeah.
we're just
Okay,
creating a
so we'll
bottleneck there
Waiting
then.
for Hanover to do, or they're waiting for.
Ball's in their court on that one. So we'll take a closer look at this one. We'll go at 4 now, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
That brings us to slide 53, but we've been at this a little over 2 hours now, and just out of consideration for the citizens that are here, I'm going to suggest we take a few-minute break. We've still got about 10 more decisions to make, or slides to visit, some of which won't take long at all, and some of which may take a little more time. So I thought we'd just, if the board's okay with it, take about a 10-minute break till 1/4 and then reconvene. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some people up after 5 minutes, so let's work toward that.
Ken, are you going?
Yes.
So that's the event, right? That's the event I need. Right, that's the event I need.
Yeah, I'm going to Ben going too? Is Ben going too?
Who knows, I can keep up with that. Yeah.
Are we interrupting you or? Okay, if you please find your seats, we'll pick up where we left off. Hopefully that break was a pause that refreshed. And we will try and be out of here by 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. Don't worry about that. Okay, you are paying attention. Good. All right. That was just a test. All right, I think we're on slide 53, page 27 of the package, the Hockett Road realignment. And on this one, we're moving from a realignment of the intersection to construct the southern leg and construct a multimodal, which is partially funded. Board, thoughts? You want to weigh in on this one? Anything to talk about, or is it just?
Yeah, I mean, so this is still, this creates still a lot of consternation, because I think we've got a real difficult situation to address in regards to the businesses that surround or that are located along that stretch of road, and the properties that are located along that stretch of road, and what the impact of this realignment may do. Now, I don't know that we fully know, because I don't think we've done all the engineering on, to take a look at it to determine its feasibility. But I think perhaps our current solution on the bottom line is this needs to be on the agenda somewhere, because somehow we've got to come up with a fix for what we anticipate to be happening on Hockett Road and the Broad Street intersection, and those four corners there that are all currently operating businesses are built out. So, and since we don't have I don't think a real good solution set in mind right now, I think, a potential option is to look at the road realignment, but I don't know that we know what the full downstream effects are of that. So without belaboring it, this discussion we've had on this before, I'll just kind of leave it there for the time being, unless any of the other board members have any comments that they'd like to make.
Okay. John?
I know there's been a lot of discussion that before I joined you all. But I'm kind of curious, what are we moving from? What did 2005 MTB said realignment of intersection? Do we know what the current?
It was very similar to this alignment. I don't remember if it closed or cul-de-sac the other part of Hockett, so.
Yeah, I know there were some meetings with residents there. The obvious challenge is you can't widen between Sunset and the car dealer to add additional lanes and those kinds of things. This was an option that's been on the books for a while to basically bring you over from Hockett and potentially align with Ashland Road or somewhere else along that Broad Street corridor. There were some thoughts shared with some residents a number of years back, and the concerns were, as Mr. Minnick had said, of the level that this plan basically had stalled out. Some of the residents that are impacted, I just talked to Ms. Burton before we started this, we need to go back and meet with folks and talk through these solutions and understand the impacts before we really finalize any planning here. And so I think that there is some work to go on this one. We have some neighbors and existing businesses that would have been impacted if there would have been a cul-de-sac of the existing road. And so we need to be sensitive to all of those concerns as we come up with a solution. But we know we have a failing intersection at Hockett and Broad now that can't be improved with the current availability of land. This alignment, especially knowing the southern capacities that are going to be increased with the Reader's Branch development that's under construction and others to the south, there needs to be an improvement to that northern end of Hockett Road where it comes into Broad, and And I think we have some design work to go to really finalize that decision.
I never understood really that issue, because I don't see why we would have to cul-de-sac either end of the road. You know, I've seen many intersections like this where you kind of go both ways, and you can still access the businesses on one side, and if you're wanting to get to 64, you just make a right turn and go straight. So I imagine anybody going to the shopping center, for example, would stay on the left and go across that light. So, I mean, like Bob said, I think we need to keep it in the plan and just figure out what the best thing to do is. But there's no way to fix it at the current Hockett and Broad, because it will be impacting 4 businesses. So,
Okay, Ms. Lassiter, any thoughts or concur with what's been said already, or? Okay. So right now, we've got Hockett and Broad needs to be addressed. It's a failing intersection that's only going to get worse, so we have to do something. The intersection that we've talked about is already built out. There's no room for improvement. This realignment would be a way around that intersection, but it absolutely would impact several residents just off of Hockett, and of course the businesses up on Broad. And the community meetings we've had so far have not really reached a consensus on that, but something does need to be done. And I think this needs more work before it gets finalized or developed into any kind of a plan. But keeping this on our MTP, this circle, will continue to highlight this intersection as one that needs attention, but needs further work. I think is where we end up. I have a quick question for staff, though. The 2014 partially funded $1 million from the TPO. If we drag our feet and take our time, does that money go away, or is that permanently allocated toward this project?
No, we've had a discussion with the TPO on that, and they are awaiting us to provide additional direction on how we want to utilize that money. But right now, we're not in danger of that being removed.
There's no sunset date where use it or lose it, or?
Not upon the last discussions we've had with them.
Okay, because I wouldn't want our indecision.
I'll say this, having this money at the TPO and not utilizing it is a factor in allocating other additional RSTP or TPO money.
I think that's where you run into risk. They say, well, you've got this $1.5 million, you've done nothing with it, why do you want more money? And of course, we can't really move it from one to the other without justifying the other. So it does put you in sort of a bind when you're going to ask for more.
And is the 400 required to come from local sources, or is that 400 that the TPO may be open to additional funding?
I think one thing we'll need to do, we will need to revise the cost estimate on the project. That'll be the first step, and then we'll have to identify. I don't think we can speculate right now on what that additional funding would come from.
Okay. Okay.
It could potentially be a combination of sources
Smart
that are
statement.
not all local general fund kind of fund.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we have a consensus this needs to stay in the plan in some fashion because we got a failing intersection that needs to be addressed. Just don't have a solution today, but this flags it and says we need to do something there for further study. Okay. Is that a consensus on that?
Yes.
All right, let's keep moving then. Next item, three-chop reconnection. This is one of the discussion items, 4-lane versus 6 lanes. Again, doesn't take into account the potential impact from improvements. And this is really both the tunnel, if you will, and the extension both in this project? Okay, so comments on either or both?
Yeah, I'm surprised we're going from nothing there right now. There's no opening under 288 to a 4-lane level of service D. That's just hard to get my head around.
Right.
It's a big upgrade, a big change in it.
Yeah, and I think the cost is going to put 6 lanes under 288. And right now, when you drive back on either side of there's nothing there. So obviously I'm not aware of all the plans, but, and you're also talking about going from what's there now to 6 lanes behind, what is it,
Bellevue Gardens.
Bellevue Gardens. I just see a lot of questions and.
My guess is, I mean, I think what'll happen is some of the folks that are struggling now with the 288 interchange will want to go that route to get to 64. There's also a lot of acres back there that would probably now all of a sudden become available for development.
On the western side of 288, right?
Yes.
Between 288 and
Yeah,
Ashland.
there's a lot of raw land back there that would
Yeah.
probably become very marketable then. So I can see it, but again, maybe it's one of those where we say level 4 with a right of way for
Well, but
growth.
once you're digging under the 288, though, you're gonna wanna get all the opening you need.
Yeah, the smart scale application that's in, is that it, the tunnel, for lack of a better term, and is that a 4-lane or a 6-lane, or? do we
It's
have-
4-lane divided.
It's 4-lane divided
Yes.
going underneath 288?
Yes, correct.
Would that be enough right away to do a 6-lane, or is that just,
I was gonna say, we can look at the volumes for each of those pieces individually and see if it needs to be 6 lanes total, or if it's just more so, toward Ashland, so.
Yeah, a big picture, I think what it's demonstrating is the attractiveness of the interchange, that they want to get there. As you said, Mr. Alvarez, with 288, this is another option there. And admittedly, it's kind of hard for me to see, quite frankly. And I understand that, models are certainly at a higher level. And this one does probably raise a little concern, and like Whitney said, we can break it down a little bit more specifically. Does it need to be 6 lanes underneath? What do the other connections look like? If we do go to 6 lanes out on Ashland, does it help relieve that just enough? So probably needs a little more work to dial in on this one.
yeah, so maybe it's the same as the last one, we do the 4, but before we make a final decision to go 4 or 6, come back with additional data that takes into account all the other guidance we've given so far today.
Correct.
What this is basically an east-west connector here that would, I guess, take some pressure off Broad Street
Right.
and provide more direct access to some of those. If you're coming off 64 onto Ashland and you're headed to drive some golf balls at Topgolf, this is a way to get over there as opposed to going Broad Street.
Drive Shack.
Drive Shack.
Topgolf's
Drive
going
Shack.
somewhere else.
Yeah, Drive Shack.
That's theoretical.
But my point was the east-west travel might take some pressure off Broad Street, depending on how that goes. But if we're doing a 4-lane tunnel, we're not doing a 6-lane road to go into a 4-lane tunnel. It doesn't make any sense. So, or it might not. So we'll look to you to give us more information and more data on whether that 6 lanes
I
really
think you look at the
justified.
6 lanes on between Ashland and 288, just to serve the growth that's right there. Right? And then, because there'd be less traffic coming under 288 to go to the other side, is the idea. Yeah, I think just so I think it looks kind of silly if we've got a smart scale application for a 4-lane tunnel and our plan calls for a 6-lane road. I think it'd be nice if we could acknowledge what the reality of the smart scale application and what we're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, and you hate to predict an LOS of D in the plan, but if you can take a harder look at the numbers, maybe that doesn't come out as an LOSD, depending on all the other guidance that we've given you, okay? So that's a 4 with an asterisk. We'll go to the next one. Oak Ridge Parkway Extension. 4-lane divided roadway, construct multimodal. So far, this has been privately funded. Okay, thoughts, one way or the other?
I mean, I'm just, I'm gonna, I'm gonna assume, hopefully, I think I'm correct, that this is a desired, extension here to open up the rest of the rest of West Creek, sorry. and to, provide an alternative manner for people to get in and out of, potentially get in and out, or at least, I guess, at least out of, and potentially in, also, into the notch based on the southern connection to Tuckahoe Creek Parkway. So it seems to make sense, and, assume the development community supports this, or, I mean, it seems to make sense, right?
Yeah, it'd be driven by market demand for that property in there. The terminus at the southern end here, I believe, is at the Tuckahoe Creek Parkway, which at this point, we really just have the emergency room out there, so it's an underutilized asset at this point. Okay, so this should stay on the plan. Any thoughts?
I just have, this to me kind of goes hand in hand with the bridge that's been talked about for years. Can you jump ahead to slide 61, if you would, Marion? And can you kind of point out to me where, on where the southern terminus of this Wilkes Ridge Parkway extension, right? Right about the middle of, between the gray line and the red line?
Yes, I would say potential about in the middle, to make sure that we're meeting access management spacing.
Because that's an exit ramp right there, right? That's an exit
This
ramp
one
off of
right here?
288. So
Yeah.
it's coming in somewhere,
Like right here,
yeah.
right down here.
Okay, thank you. I think it's obvious that this is here to fill out the West Creek, but I think kind of the 740 extension and bridge kind of go hand in hand with this to me.
Okay. Okay, so the thought is that both that one and the bridge, both would stay on the plan? Is that, okay, we got consensus there. Then there was one in between those two on page, or slide 59. This is going to be a study as to whether or not we need another additional interchange on 288. At this point, we're pursuing TPO funding. Maybe staff, is there an update on the TPO? Taking a look at studying this to see if the
No, we submitted an application for funding, and this was part of the discussion where they said this would be a good application, and they encouraged us to have movement on the $1.5 million on the Hockett River relocation.
So we asked them about this, and they answered about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I take that as there's no TPO funding immediately available for this. Yeah. Okay. Ms. Minnick, your thoughts on this one? I mean, my understanding is an interchange is going to require an awful lot of land to do a cloverleaf there. There could be some on-off ramps, but
I mean, is this, I mean, again, I guess this is, so this is, the connection into Hockett. It, potentially opens another can of worms. I think the study, fully understanding this is via study would be most important to me for kind of understanding what this would mean. Now, whether I guess if it serves two purposes of unloading traffic from Hockett onto 288 and connects the western side of 288 and West Creek to 288, it's probably the way to go. Again, it's another access management kind of point to open up potential development in those areas, so. I mean, yes, so.
Could I ask a question? Was this assumed as being done in order to achieve the level of service of some of the other surrounding areas? In other words, is this all, are these gears meshed? Is this all tied together as a comprehensive plan that if you pull out one gear, then the other gears don't turn? Is that?
Yes, and to clarify a little bit more, it looks at all the links being complete, and I just want to be transparent. Partial links don't get us to where we are, but for a time being, you're certainly not going to be able to build everything in its entirety, but with the plan forward to get there, knowing what the end game is, when we look at these links, it isn't the partial, but it's the full, because that answers the global question, both within Goochland, but how it interacts with the surrounding communities as well.
So it is important to have some sort of east-west here
Correct.
to take some of the pressure off some of the other intersections and the other roadways.
Correct.
Does that help, Mr. Minnick?
I think this one is really about connectivity, because you're connecting, while it may create a can of worms at Hackett, it may also alleviate traffic that would normally follow Hackett all the way to Broad Street, could go towards that and get on 288, and then they'll get on 64, and it might eliminate somebody having to go to the intersection of 64 and Ashland Road. So, and
Even Hackett and Broad.
Hackett and Broad could alleviate it. So I think it makes sense. The exact location may be tricky because you're close to two other interchanges.
Yeah.
And I don't know what VDOT is going to like as far as distance between those interchanges. So,
Yeah, I'm curious, do y'all have an opinion on that? Because my impression is these interchanges are too close together.
So there was a previous discussion with VDOT about this interchange, and so they looked at different configurations for what would actually fit, and there are different configurations that will fit into this footprint, so.
So let me, because I'm trying to catch up with what y'all are saying. The plan that we're talking about is a one bullet, 4-lane divided roadway. Second bullet, conduct a study on the justification of an interchange there.
Yes.
I see those as two different things. If we didn't do the interchange, are you still saying that we should go under or over 288 right there, all the way from Hackett to Wilkes Ridge?
We did not look at them independently. It's more of the system.
Okay, so
So
you're
it-
not proposing, this is conduct a study, if an interchange is justified, put a 4-lane road
Connecting.
between
Yes.
interchange.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that helps me, because I thought maybe we needed the road regardless, to just, because what Mr. Peterson was saying a moment ago, take some pressure off of, I wasn't thinking so much the other interchanges, I was also thinking up and down Hackett.
Without
Go right ahead.
I'm
Yeah.
concerned. about
without the
Hackett, too.
interchange,
You
then
probably
you,
don't, yeah,
then you probably have more impact on Hackett.
right.
Because anybody going south is gonna go that way, go to Hackett, and then use Hackett. Or they have to go up to Broad Street and get on the interchange there, which is still possible.
So the condition for the road is really you've got to have an interchange, I think.
Seems to make sense.
You can't, if you don't get the interchange, you can't,
You
at
prob-
this point, it probably doesn't make sense for a road.
You might not need a 4-lane divided, you could probably go with something else, depending on what development goes in there. But yeah, this is kind of a package deal. You do all this, or you do something completely different.
Yeah.
I guess just make it clear that that's the thing, that if an interchange can be put in there, then we need a 4-lane road that, I think that goes both ways, is what you're saying, 4-lane to Wilkes Ridge to Hackett. Okay.
Yeah, so
2
basically
lanes
it's,
each direction, yeah,
yeah,
total of 4.
right.
He's saying both east and,
Right.
of
East and
288,
west of-
East and west of 288.
Yeah, right, okay.
Right.
just want to make sure that's what y'all are
correct.
proposing, because I kind of looked at them independently, like if we couldn't get an interchange, we still wanted the road.
Yeah, so
Between the two.
the bullets might read more like, conduct a study, and if justified, build a 4-lane and an interchange,
Right.
or if not justified, then an alternative solution.
Yeah.
But you're basically saying, do the study, and if this is warranted, go ahead. If not,
It's dependent on the study.
yeah, it does need more work. We're not in a position now to know whether this needs a clover leaf or a diamond or a flyover. We just don't know any of that. So, but it does, if it is an integral part of your overall plan, neither can we just pull it out and say, let's not do it. So something needs to be done there, just a matter of what, and the study will tell us what. Is that?
Mr. Chairman, can I-
Yeah.
one of the things in the later slides, there are some other slides in our comp plan for connectivity benefit, and one of which is a more internal north-south connector that's closer to the parallels 288 on the western side of 288. Was there consideration for the need for this east-west to tie into, yeah,
I think it's this here, because this is Hockett, I believe, and this is in between Hockett, and this is 288.
yes, correct. So the comp plan still shows a north-south connector with an east-west connector. And that was not considering the interchange. And so we definitely have to go back and revisit this, but I think there's still some east-west benefit, even if the interchange is not installed. And whether or not that needs to be 4 lanes or what the appropriate amount is, I think we need to maybe take a little more look at that before we bring this back for further consideration.
Okay,
Yeah, one more question, if you don't mind,
sure.
Mr. Chairman. So, Hockett Road, we're proposing several different things that impact Hockett, Tucko Creek, Wilkes Ridge, the new connector. Are we looking at all those improvements, and how what that's doing to Hockett Road? Because we're gonna drive traffic more to them, right?
So it is modeled with Hockett Road as a 2-lane, and it looks at the overall impacts of that network.
Right.
And so these additional connections are giving traffic more, it's dispersing the traffic more than just all of it being concentrated on Hockett Road. So it is looking at the impacts of Hockett Road. It's
Okay.
not necessarily looking at the intersection impact where, this new extension comes in.
If we do the east-west, doesn't that drive more people onto Hockett? Because now they can't get there from that east-west.
So
No.
it,
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
yeah, it can
Okay.
take people off of Broad Street that go on to Hockett today, and they'll use 288 to go, where they need to go within that area. Does that make sense?
But then drive them back to Hockett Road at the end? I'm talking about the east-west, I'm not following. I mean, I'm not saying that you're going from Broad to 288, back to east-west to back to Hockett Road. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's traffic that would have generally followed Broad to Hockett and going to cut the corner off by coming 288, and that would have been going southern on the other roads. This would give them an alternative network.
Rather than go to Hockett and Broad, you can jump off here and get on 288 and go where you want to go, if you want to. I mean,
Okay.
So it disperses the traffic along Hockett a little more as opposed to everybody going north and then to Broad.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
anything else? I think more study and whatever the study says to do,
Yeah,
And it is a-
definitely more study.
and it's an integral part, so it would need to be done at some point, just a matter of what. Okay,
Okay?
so then I go to page, or slide 63. There you go. River Road between Hermitage and Hockett. The only addition here would be the addition of multimodal, is that? And this is where we're starting to pick up bike traffic.
And this is also connectivity for the multimodal along River Road.
To connect with the other sections of multimodal. Okay. Any thoughts?
I like it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Whatever.
Yeah. Don't like it as much. Okay.
Don't like as much.
All right. So we'll go ahead and keep moving then.
Yep.
In the interest of time here, we're 65. Patterson Avenue from Hockett to the Henrico County line. Again, just connectivity of the multimodal.
Yes.
Well,
And
of course, moving from 4 lanes, what it is now, to 6.
That's big.
That's big,
That's
particularly,
really
and
big.
when I saw this, which was after we voted last time on the right turn only out of the independent living facility, and I was even more pleased with the vote to make the right turn when you're talking about crossing
Right, 3 more
six,
lanes.
6 lanes now.
Yeah.
So this is important and big, and I guess the data, you're simply saying the data supports what, the same,
Yep.
that the data supported in 2005.
Yes.
We
So
need
it's-
6 lanes.
Data-driven and required to be 6 lanes to get it out of the D, E, and F category and get into the A, B, C.
Now, what do you do when you get to the Henrico line and it drops
Uh,
back to,
Henrico already has
Bottlenecks
that
it.
planned. That's already a planned expansion from Parham Road to the Goochland line, to the Tuckahoe Creek, I believe is where they,
To be 6 lane?
to be 6 lanes.
Thank you.
There's your answer.
So it'll actually match.
Okay, so we leave this in
Yes.
without objection, okay? We're getting there. River Road.
this one's, well, not my district, so that's somebody else, but this one gives me pause too. But I guess when you were going over the initial presentation, I guess the reality is even widening Patterson or Route 6 to 6 lanes, you'd like to think that would take some pressure off, but it really doesn't have anything to do with it, I'm guessing.
It takes some of it, but not fully, yeah.
Subjectively, how much of this is being driven by development outside of Goochland in Henrico? Is that a big piece of this, or is?
It's a little bit of both, I would think. And again, it does have some regional influence that's feeding it, but the model's truly seeing in the southern area a high demand for east-west that's pushing the need for that. You know, alternative is, does Patterson get widened even further, which is, you know, that can certainly be an alternative to consider, but, you know, again, based on the socioeconomic data, the regional model, where these trips are in the southern portion of the county, it's pushing a fair amount of traffic on that road.
And when you say on here, this is a regional model, not just Goochland, maybe that goes to what, and maybe,
Yeah.
Mandy, you know the same thing. We're not gonna build a 3 or 4 lane road and come to a bridge in Henrico and it goes back to 2 lanes.
Right.
Does Henrico have plans to widen?
I think that most of that area in Henrico is already built out. So I don't know that there's anything left in Henrico along River Road that can have large growth. Or even Patterson for the matter. I think the work that they're doing on Patterson is really to correct the problems that are already there. So they already have traffic issues. The Parham Road interchange with Patterson is a mess pretty much all day now. But especially during rush hour, and I think they're just trying to alleviate it, and they just figure they would take it all the way out to Goochland. But I don't know about River Road. I don't think there's anything, there's lots of expensive property down there, but I don't think anything that's gonna be tore up and add subdivisions. So,
Do we know if Henrico is planning to widen River Road on their side of the bridge?
I haven't seen anything at the TPO level, but
They, I mean, bless you, they just replaced that bridge over the Tuckahoe Creek at the county line, and that is a two-lane bridge that's built to last 50 years. So I don't even know how we get to 3 lanes. What this is saying is, I mean, currently, the level of service is green, it's A through C, currently. Something's gonna drive it to, even with 3 lanes, down to a level of service D. And I don't see what that is in the next 20 years. I mean, the bridge is built to last 50 years. I don't know what in the next 20 years. Now, I know this is not a commercial corridor, this is a residential corridor, and it's meant to be a reasonably peaceful and quiet corridor. I know there's an increased traffic from some of the developments, but this, along River Road is really, we haven't seen a lot of economic development, you know, or large community developments along that road. And if it's green now and they just built a bridge for 2 lanes, I'm having a hard time. I mean, granted, a 3-lane is really just the turns, and so when you go across the bridge, you're not losing any through traffic, you're just losing the ability to turn left or right on the bridge, which you probably don't need, so. Level service D, I don't know, I mean, I believe your data, I mean, your data's your data, but I'm not seeing it at this point.
I'm Sam with you. I mean, the more I look at it, what about, do you all know, is more of the pressure west of 288 where there's schools and, fields and a little more activity? Is there some pressure there that maybe we could look at something west of 288? And what about, if there's pressure on, or what about Pagebrook and, I was gonna say Blair, but I see something else on here.
Those are being improved later on in a thing. I think you definitely got to add multimodal in here. I mean, there's more bicycles than cars in that area. And it's in the plan, the 2040 plan has construct multimodal, and I think that needs to stay. As far as the 3 lanes, a lot of those developments already have turn lanes required. So you kind of have a, right turn in anyway. You don't have a left turn in, but you have a right turn in. So a lot of the turn lanes are already there. I'm not recommending we go back down to 2 lanes, I guess, which would be line of service F or something, but I don't know. So maybe you leave it as 3 with an LOSD, but add the multimodal, and that takes some of the pressure off, and we need to be convinced to be much worse than that. I can tell you that I do not expect a lot of my constituents along that road to say, why aren't you widening this road? Why aren't you doing more development in here? I don't expect that. I don't expect complaints about they want more development along River Road. I'd probably expect more of the opposite, obviously. So, yeah, maybe leave it at the 3 lanes with the turn lanes, but maybe a lot of the right turn lanes are already in. The bridge is only 2 lanes as it is, so I cannot see going to 4 here.
And the potential for growth, doesn't it change a little bit east and west of 288? And what's open now and what's available, doesn't it change a little bit, the potential for more growth? I mean,
There is a difference on River Road, not Patterson, but River Road, west of 288, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, west of 288, there isn't any water and sewer. So you're not going to have any intensive development. It'll be all well water and septic. The water lines don't go underneath 288 along River Road. Now they go along further up, but the water lines don't go along River Road. So in the long range plan, there's a plan to do that, but near term, there's not going to be a lot of development west of 288 that's intense.
Mr. Chairman, the largest property area here that's undeveloped is Tuckahoe Plantation, which more than likely will not be. North of that, north of River Road, there are a couple of 95-acre, 100-acre lots.
Do you mind pointing them out?
Oh, yeah. So this is Tuckahoe Plantation here, and then there is some vacant land here that I believe at some point we heard from somebody that wanted to develop property up there, but I haven't seen anything lately. So I guess those things could impact.
Do we have the water capacity?
We do, on the east of 288.
We still have some capacity east of 280.
Yeah, we would require them to do a water model themselves as part of their project, if they were to bring that in. But yeah, there is a booster pump station that was installed specifically to boost the pressures in that area. And we already know we have the water capacity in the system itself, but we would still be requiring a water model just to verify that.
And we do not have anything currently under review, and so I just so folks don't get anxious about it, there's not any
Right.
projects we're
And-
reviewing.
And whatever was proposed there wasn't a high-density type place either, so,
I'm having a hard time seeing the need.
yeah.
So 3-lane with multimodal, I mean, it's
Why
not,
not leave it as is?
it's not abundantly clear that the need to go from 2 to 3, other than your data tells me even that won't get us there, but
Do we know what the level is today?
it's green. It's A, level A.
It's between A
A
through
and,
C.
A and C, it's it's green,
Yeah.
it's A and C. I would put this on the list to maybe not plan for, at this point, unless we can get some more data that really
Just
shows
leave it,
why.
leave it 2-lane, but add multimodal to get the
Yeah.
bicycle traffic off.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
Okay, let's leave this at 2, and then if you again could take a harder look at that one, and just let us know before we formally adopt it, just to make sure we're on solid ground, but I'm having trouble seeing that one, so, okay.
Be interesting to know what pushed it to be
Yeah,
4 lanes.
we remain to be convinced, okay? On to the next one. West Creek Parkway and Patterson Avenue. This is where, in the general area where we've already approved some development at Patterson and 288. And this is just for a 2-lane undivided, and take a look at the intersections to see what makes the most sense. Privately funded again, because we've approved development in there. Any thoughts or questions on this one? Pretty straightforward. Okay, on the next one. This is the Spida. That's a mouthful, I don't want to say it every time, so. The Spida. Could you, let's see,
I'm gonna start with like east-west or north-south.
yeah, we've got two slides on the same project.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you can just walk us through, eat this elephant one bite at a time, maybe.
All right, so the first piece is the east-west connector, which you see going from Hockett Road, connecting, I can do this, connecting into West Creek at the 288 interchange. So that is proposed to be a 4-lane divided roadway. Now, when we modeled this, previously we modeled it with River Road as a 4-lane. Well, we came back and looked at River Road as a 3-lane, and now, and with an additional connection between the north-south into River Road. So because we have dropped the capacity of River Road, as well as eliminated the direct connection to River Road, that has caused additional vehicles to be attracted to this east-west connector. So that has driven up the level of service, as well as the volume. Okay, so,
When you say River Road, you mean River Road West?
no, River Road 650, the one that we just talked about.
Piece we just talked about, okay.
Yes,
That's what I figured you were pretty clear, but I'm
Correct.
kind of,
The previous iteration had
Right.
it dropping straight down the river as opposed to being
would-
moved
yeah.
over. And
It
what they're
would-
saying is moving it over takes some traffic off of river, but it
yeah.
would put more traffic on this east-west connector potentially. Okay.
And then, so from the north-south, from the east-west connector down to, looking into connect into Hockett Road about Fleetwood, and then bringing in Hockett Road to tie into this connector, which we heard from the citizens at the last meeting, Previously, we had this connection go through cobblestone and then connect into River. So we have identified this as a viable option to shift over to align with Hockett.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
So I know that straight line down, and when I remember first looking at this when I first got on the board, a lot of times these things are just high-level conceptual. This is where we need a road when you look at all the configurations. But I think at that last meeting, and I wondered the same thing, that line that came straight down dropped you,
Right
put you
here.
down at like a bottom of Patterson, 2 hills on Patterson Avenue coming down, so that wasn't viable. So my question is this new, what you just highlighted there going, joining Hockett Road near Fleetwood. Have you looked at the viability, and obviously we know you can dump out Hockett Road onto Patterson, okay. But when I go up there, you look over, the topography drops off quite a bit to the right when you turn onto Hockett Road. So have you looked at those kind of things in terms of the viability of putting a road actually there in terms of the topography?
Can you point to where you're talking?
I think he means right here.
If this is Hockett Road,
Right.
and you turn in here, you look, it's wooded, but you look, it drops quite a bit. So when I first saw that meeting, I drove down there the next couple of days because somebody had pointed that out to me that, you know, just drawing a line coming here may not, you can't see too far into the woods, but it definitely declines. So I know that when you drew it here, or the line came down here,
Correct.
this is sort of at the bottom of,
The vertical curve.
yeah,
Yep.
height here, and it drops, so that wasn't very viable. This is viable to get onto Patterson, but is this viable to build this road? So I'm just wondering when you, this didn't seem to take into account the topography and much. Does this take into account topography is my question.
Well, and again, with a long-range plan like this, ultimately, you would do an alignment study to figure out where it's least impactful from a right-of-way standpoint, environmental issues, where it's going to be most cost-effective. No, we haven't gone to that level of detail yet. But that's, again, these are broad lines. Clearly, we were definitely trying to move it west to avoid the known impacts, if you will, as far as the right-of-way.
I understand what, yeah,
Yep.
I appreciate what you're saying, I totally follow it, but it's things like lines on a map that sometimes get the people to come out, it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like we had at the last meeting, because I got calls that day, you know, or I'm going to a meeting tonight, they're putting a road right through my neighborhood, into my house. And then we find out, well, that's not viable, so I just don't want to put a line on a map that, if we can see it now, that's not viable. And I don't know that it is, I just know when you turn
Right.
onto Hockett, it does drop down into the woods.
Okay. We can look at Tobo.
Not at this juncture, Mr. Garner. We'll open up to maybe public comment later on if we have time and people want us.
It's not something I wanted to comment, it was just answering his question.
No, okay, that's fine.
Well, I mean, I think they answered my question, you know, about how much has been looked into it.
I think, just maybe to save you the time and save us the time, we're not at all looking at the exact locations of these roads. That is something that would be determined way down the road. So there's an implication or an inference of a degree of specificity here that maybe doesn't exist. This is really an early draft, and anyway, I won't belabor the point, but we don't need to iron it out tonight, I guess is my point, so.
Yeah, I want to be cautious about just putting a plan in place that if we know that it's going to be very difficult or very expensive to put a road. But I guess this is conceptual. So back to a conceptual question I have on this. And I didn't have the benefit of being here in March. I wasn't on the board, and I know this has been talked about. But I want to just ask us, is this east-west connector, are we doing it because we want to, or are we looking at this because we want to avoid widening Hockett Road?
No, as you're seeing in some of the stories being told with River Road, in the east-west demand that's out there, and to serve this, southern prime economic development there, that it calls for more east-west connection. It's not going to be handled just by Patterson, certainly River Road, which to some degree doesn't make sense anyways, because it's got to serve this immediate point of development that's through there. So creating that linkage, probably the linkage to the far west of east-west, that piece there is probably that west piece is probably the least impactful of the grand scheme. It's really the traffic is going to be concentrated more on Patterson Ave and then on the future connection of the east-west from the interchange over to the intersection. That's correct. Yeah, that's where most of that traffic exists. So yes, a connection over there certainly does help, but you still have to get east-west through this property.
Okay, so there's east-west pressure
Pressure.
at that point.
Yes,
This isn't there to ease pressure off of Hockett. You say there's independent of pressure on Hockett, there's east-west pressure.
Correct.
Or the models show east-west pressure
correct.
in that area.
And
We get-
you can look at the figure that has the future traffic volume when you do no improvements, and you'll see all of those red lines on the east-west connections that exist today. So there will be issues with those. So this has helped to help relieve some of those issues.
But the east-west connector doesn't exist today.
Correct.
So the pressure is where? Is it on Patterson and 288?
Yes, it's Patterson,
So we're trying to relieve
River,
280.
yeah, Broad, all of those existing.
Right. Go ahead, I will
No,
interrupt you.
thank you, but you can't get the pressure at that point unless you've really loaded up Hockett Road.
See, that's what I'm keep worried about, but we keep hitting Hockett Road, it seems like to me. Now, that's the fourth connector we've put on Hockett Road.
What this is, and they just shared, but this is anticipating some additional load of development in this particular corridor that doesn't exist today.
Right.
And so while some of that is estimation and consistency with our comp plan, that load will go somewhere if and when this is developed.
Right.
And so I think one of this is very conceptual, not knowing exactly where that development is going to occur, in what section of this quadrant is it going to occur first.
Yeah, what
Yes,
comes
it will disperse some traffic from north-south, but it will also direct the traffic of what develops in this corridor as well.
Right. Well, on the east end of this, that's the 288 interchange at this point,
Correct.
and that currently exists.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
It's West Creek, right?
So you're,
Yes.
so you're pulling people off of 288 at that point,
Into this area, into the speed up.
whereas they can't get there now because it doesn't exist. So right now, they would be going further on, south on 288.
They would either have to come down Hockett or come Patterson. Or West Creek,
Oh, West Creek. Right,
Broad Branch.
right.
So this one, I think a big risk for this one is how much traffic is it gonna dump on West Creek Parkway?
Yep.
Or alleviate, not sure
Right.
which, right?
And we were purposeful from that aspect, because you're right, in terms of what we understand, certainly in talking with other engineers, the level of future traffic that's going to be on West Creek, and trying to understand how to minimize the impact of where this east-west road wants to connect. And connecting it directly at that existing intersection at an interchange, rather than to the north or south, where they then would have to get on West Creek and get to this interchange. You're going to load up more traffic onto West Creek. If we went to the north to Broad Branch, they're going to be coming down, of course, over a 2-lane bridge that's there today and loading up a section of West Creek. So that node, in our mind, is the least impactful to get that traffic largely where they want to be, and that's out to 288. And if they want to continue south on West Creek, they have that opportunity as well. They can also go back out to that new Patterson Avenue connector and head west from there, if you will. So it does give 2 outlets when we put that Patterson connection in as well. It's not just taking all that traffic that's in this SPIDA and putting it out onto the interchange, but that was key to us in terms of, and we know there's discussions that have to be had with VDOT and how all that intersection plays out. But again, that's to minimize the disruption along West Creek.
I mean, don't you have a lot of folks coming from these complexes in the evening? This is their only way to get on 288 South, isn't it? So you're saying that is it's not relieving pressure up here by adding this?
But so if we were to, you're right. So if we were to add that link, if you just take the east-west connector and bend it to the north up to Broad Bay, now you're adding to that traffic. That's the idea.
Okay.
Adding to additional traffic, which then has got to get back to the interchange.
Gotcha.
But you're not recommending that?
No.
You're not recommending that?
No.
This is what you're recommending?
Future connection, north-south there, is that to the H.H. Hunt development?
I believe it is, yeah.
Yes. Yep. And that's shown as 2-lane.
Is this required to stimulate growth in that area? I mean, do we need to have this east-west connector in there to stimulate growth? Or projected growth?
Seems like it.
Stimulate, serve, I think we look at it as what we know from the data, what it's telling us, and how we accommodate that level of traffic demand, that this is the network that's required.
Based on what again?
Based on what?
Based on the employment data, the social economic data that feeds the model.
Does strong community opposition to widening Hockett Road, does it include, because I know this is largely wooded. Does the community resistance start like here or earlier? I mean,
It's up and down. It's all along Hockett from, I believe, from basically Tuckahoe Creek Parkway south. Is
All the
where
way- pretty much all the way
all the way down.
to Patterson.
All the way to
Yeah,
Patterson?
all the way to Patterson.
But again, with this model, it doesn't change the Hockett, the need for it to be any wider than it is today.
Right.
Except we're adding new interchanges.
Yeah, we're adding a lot of traffic on Hockett.
Yeah, putting traffic on Hockett. Is that-
I guess, and a couple of quick ones here. That interchange all the way to the right, okay, there. You've got an exit ramp with traffic coming south. Is VDOT okay with an interchange that close to an exit ramp coming off of the interstate? Is that, or the 288? Is that consistent with VDOT policy, or?
Yeah, those are discussions that we're going to have, certainly, and there's access management, as you're aware of, and the distance, which based on what is there today versus, which is 670-some feet, right? Versus the requirement of about 900 feet, correct? So it's less than that, but it is different. And if you think of it, that traffic is not coming off of that ramp to merge over to the left to get to the intersection. That's where there's a lot of friction at interchanges, when you're getting off the ramp and you're trying to get over left immediately. That isn't the situation here. The other thing is, we haven't determined exactly what type of movement we need to come out of this east-west connector. Could it be a right-in, right-out only, which would be certainly viewed a little bit more favorably? You know, and I have repeated this at the public meetings, but VDOT is getting very creative, innovative. Some might call it confusing with intersections. but really trying to minimize the interruption to traffic with restricting certain movements. And this isn't a full-blown four-way intersection. That's not what we're looking for. So
Well, would people be able to go straight across and get on
they,
288?
they would be able to go straight across.
So it's a four, you can go across.
Kind of,
or
but it
turn
doesn't
right or
have
turn left.
3 movements from all 4 legs.
And of course, if you put a light there, all it's gonna do is back up the Cap 1 traffic, right? All the way up
Yep.
Broad Branch and,
Correct, so they have the innovative intersections like a restricted crossing, what they call an R-cut, where you wouldn't always have to signalize those, and again, to keep the traffic moving. So there are potentially some of that can enter the conversation with VDOT in terms of how do we creatively manage that type of intersection.
because if you come out of there and you wanna get on, if 288's blocked up south, which it often is, from 288 from there all the way south, a lot of times that'll block up, then what, they just turn left and go up West Creek and go all the way around past Farm Bureau and all the other, I don't know how you get out of there if going south is blocked, which, again, at peak rush hours, it kinda is. Okay, I mean, it's a little hard to do some of this when you have no idea what's gonna go there.
Right,
Um,
right.
It's gonna be a Six
And
Flags.
the level of
somewhere.
the impact, right.
You don't know what the level of impact is.
Right.
But going down to some of these bullets, one of them said, reserve 4 lanes. Third bullet down on the 20. What is the 4 lanes? The north-south?
Yes, the
The-
Patterson Avenue connection right here.
Okay, that's
4
what that
lanes.
is.
Yes.
So it's calling for a 2-lane initially, but reserve the right-of-way for a 4-lane, depending on development.
Yeah, as development comes online.
And then east-west connector, 4-lane divided.
Yes.
So 4 lanes would come into that intersection
Mm-hmm.
and 4 lanes at Hockett. And Hockett's only a 2-lane, so you go 4 down to 2, I guess.
Yeah, you would only build that road, the 4-lane section, to the point of need. And again, whatever development it needs to serve, and maybe just west of that Patterson Ave connection, it can be 4 lanes. Again, that will really depend on what level of impact is out there.
Okay, can we go to the next slide, which is
Yeah.
for discussion? Because we
Right.
need to have some discussion around this. The 4-lane gets us to a level of service E.
That is so before, when we had River Road as a 4-lane, Patterson as 6, this east-west connector operated at level service C. Now that you've removed the connection to River that we had shown previously, as well as the additional capacity of River, it has degraded the operations on this roadway because traffic has more attracted to this segment.
So the east-west, if we fully implement the plan as currently contemplated, would still be a level E. Is that what this is, the model is telling us?
Yes. Yes.
The area we're calling West Creek is up in here, right? And this is almost shows it, right here's Tuckahoe Creek Parkway up there.
Mm-hmm.
Slide 57, don't go back to it, but the Wilkes Ridge Parkway extension brings it just right to that point. Is Broad Branch, and I probably should have pulled out my comprehensive plan maps or some of that, but this is kind of a barrier, so we're not going to see pressure, road pressure from up here add to this likely, are we? That's not, in other words, I'm assuming this is kind of a barrier that's going to, activity is going to be up here and activity, so the growth that's going to impact this intersection is really, we're looking at it
This area.
right here, right? I mean, it may be
Yes.
somewhat here, but probably what I think I've seen might be coming here is going to probably work off of Patterson a little bit more. Is that fair to say? That we're not gonna be looking at more, I mean, there's the county line right there, so there's not a lot more that can impact this except what comes up here and what we drive this way. That seems, I think the majority is that area. Yeah.
Wilkes Ridge Parkway, oh, sorry.
Just for the record.
Wilkes Ridge Parkway is already kind of out there as a road to be built by the developer as growth occurs. Can this Patterson Avenue connection be treated the same way? We don't own that land. Can it be left out there as development comes up? We don't know what's gonna come there. We know it's not gonna stay in farmland. So is that something that can be done? And I don't know what that means to our plan, but to say it's there, but we don't, we'll build it as it comes instead of the other way around. Because I know that the folks along Hackett Road are concerned about growth and the change from rural to suburban. And so we're saying, well, we're not going to widen Hackett because we don't want to impact you. But then we're going to put another 1,500,000 acres out there to be developed. That's going to basically turn them from rural to suburban. So is that something that can be done as development comes up and it comes for approval? And so we're not necessarily doing it to build something, but let it kind of happen naturally.
Well, and I think to your point, that's why you do the 5-year updates, is you, as development comes online and you get more information and more development comes in, you have a better understanding of those incremental steps.
This feels like a solution in search of a problem to me. And because, I mean, an undertaking like this seems to me to be like, almost like a, kind of like a Kinloch-style development, where you have a full featured kind of a plan of, a conceptual plan of development that precedes all of this, that then shows where all of the potential growth and developments is going to occur by phase, and the roadways to support those. So I feel like I'm just putting a line on a map because I can, and with no real, with it not serving any real purpose, because I don't know what I'm trying to fix yet. So that's the feeling I have. I mean, that's the feeling I have on this. I mean, I know, I can't speculate whether connecting this thing into West Creek over there is the way to do it, or if it should drop further down south. I don't know if there might be some ramifications with RCC. I don't know exactly the full terrain, land, how the land looks like it's possible, but I just am not. I'm not sure, but if the property owners want to really, I mean, if there's anticipation that that they're going to do something there, then I wish in this case, I guess for this amount of effort where we're really going to start impacting Hackett, Patterson Avenue,
West Creek
West Creek
Parkway.
Parkway.
West Creek
Parkway,
River,
River,
288,
that
and
we
Spade.
really ought to have a full appreciation of what that whole thing would look like, and how we would address those plans. So I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's.
You raised several important points. One is we are dealing with some, I won't call them hypersensitive, but we've got issues already on a number of these roads in that area that we're addressing throughout this plan. But what are we trying to solve here? Not sure, because don't know the nature and extent and the impact. Let me ask a question that I asked before, and I'll just ask it again on this one. is this an independent gear that could be lifted out? If we took this, in other words, let's take everything else other than this. Does it fall apart? Does it hold together? How integral is this whole system? You know, are the gears meshed? You see where I'm going with this? I mean, I'm not doing a very good job here, but is this a standalone, or is this something that's fully integrated?
I would say fully integrated. If you look at what we're still proposing with Patterson and River, that really signifies the importance of having these east-west connections.
So,
So if you don't have this connection, where is that traffic going to go?
Is it even more independent than that? Is that where you're going, that you wouldn't?
well, I
you
guess
Where it's going now.
what I'm asking, are we worrying about traffic that's going to be created from this? Because the existing traffic, we've talked about Patterson widening that to 6 and 6 lanes and solving some of the interchanges up and down 288 and some of those other things to address the existing traffic situation. So then, are these 5 circles to address the traffic emanating from this area, or does building this road network somehow help out the existing traffic?
Largely, it's to serve the development and the traffic and travel demand in this area. So I didn't know where you're going. If you unplug that demand, then what does it look like?
Yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing is, if you do something with this, it's gonna need a north-south and an east-west. I mean, I get that.
Very likely, yes.
So the other question, if you don't do anything with this, do we need the north-south and east-west to mesh with the other gears of the rest of the plant? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, so you're unplugging that demand in there.
So I'm going back to Mr. Minnick's comment, we're trying to, you know, it's a solution in search of a problem. Is it solving our existing problem, or is it solving a future problem, which we don't know what it is yet?
Yeah, it's the future.
So we're solving the future problem that we don't know what that problem
We
is yet.
don't know fully,
But
exactly.
we do know that
We would need a solution.
we would need a solution,
We have a problem.
right? When we have a problem, we need a solution.
We'll go make a
You can
problem.
quote me on that.
We'll go make a problem, and then we'll go, here's our solution. That's
Mr.
good.
Chairman, if I may, let me remind you that your major thoroughfare plan is part of your comprehensive plan, all of which is, hey, let's zone this so it can be developed, and then zone this so it can be developed, and then if all that development occurs, what other needs does it drive? What public facilities, what libraries, what fire stations, what roads? The idea of these far-reaching plans is that you not have a development proposal in front of you now and try and figure out what's needed. And so I understand that, you know, we don't know what problem we're solving, but this, in conjunction with what is on your comprehensive plan for development allowed in this region, suggests that at least you should have these marks on your major thoroughfare plan. Because if development occurs as your comp plan allows, these needs would be there. But obviously, these are policy decisions for you all, but I just wanted to take a minute, and because we have current transportation issues that we're trying to address, but the aspect of your thoroughfare plan as part of your comp plan is saying, try and take that long, long look, so you wouldn't know exactly what would develop. If that's helpful, it may not be, maybe it's just.
What is helpful, because in the comp plan, it already says that you need to take into account connectivity, traffic flows, east, west, north, south, collector, all of that's described verbally. This obviously is the map that would flow from that. One of the problems I'm having is exactly where these roads tie. We got 5 intersections, and putting those on a map, you know, is kind of somewhat problematic in that it depends on the solution, exactly where things tie in, exactly how things are done. Is it lights? Is it traffic circles? Is it what? That degree of specificity. You know, I get that in order to develop this area, we'll need north, south, and east-west connectors, but exactly how and where. So the comprehensive plan does say that you need to have connectivity, and you do need to have, in this area, you're gonna need a north, south, and east-west, so it just matter where and how is the issue. So what would be a way to address what we think we know without addressing things that we know we don't know? Is that
I guess
Sufficiently
perhaps
confusing?
that's the challenge. But I mean, an east-west connector's been on this back in 2005 and the north-south as well. And some of what you're hearing today is some of the places where those roads were generally shown last time aren't perhaps still available because they're now subject to development plans. And so you can't continue to show them where they were. You do need to show them someplace else. But you're right that there's a level of specificity that,
Yeah, we've got something like 12 bullet points and 5 intersections, and we know we've got hypersensitivity about traffic flows in this area. And I just, and I don't know how everybody else, but I've been getting bombarded with things on all
Bombarded.
sides. Pro, against, this, that. I don't sense there's a consensus among the parties of vested interest here. And by vested interest, the county, landowners, all of that. I don't sense there's a coalition around particular solutions. I know there's a lot have been proposed by different sides and all that. So, I don't know, I guess that's a long way of saying that I'm not sure I'm prepared to come down on this one just yet.
Yeah, Mr. Peterson, I concur with what you're saying. I think you asked the pointed question, is this integrated or is it fit, is it a standalone? And I know you said it's integrated, but then you all also said that this is here to serve this area. So that tells me it can be pulled out. I think this should be pulled out. If you were just look in the overall east-west pressure, I think of it as 250, 64, of course, 250 in Patterson. And of course, on our plans that we look like we have consensus is to build a bridge across to Ridgefield Parkway. That seems to me to kind of, when you look at a map, that's got your east-west pressure kind of covered.
Yep.
This stands alone in my view. Now, the north-south pressure, I think, is coming, and it seems like at both ends of Hockett Road, there's pressure. I mean, the school board owns land, I forget if the land is above Tuckahoe Creek or below Tuckahoe Creek Parkway.
Above.
Above. So I kind of look at Tuckahoe Creek Parkway, things above there are gonna put pressure up at Centerville, and things below are gonna put pressure more down here, I would think. But I'm not sure, I'm with you, I'm not sure why we're trying to do this at this point. I don't think this addresses global east-west
No,
pressure.
no.
It sounds like it's not ready for prime time yet. It needs to percolate a little bit more. Mr. Badesky, maybe I can ask you to weigh in here. Given what you've heard about the lack of consensus around the parties of vested interests, given what you've heard about the back and forth here on the Board of Supervisors and searching for a solution, what would be the possible ways forward here? We've been here into extra innings already, and I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. What are the options to move this forward at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a fair statement to say we've received a great deal of input from the landowners in this area, a great deal of input by the potentially impacted landowners in this area. There's some concerns that the board mentioned here today, and I think Ms. McGee's point is correct. I mean, this is a planning document, but I'm sensing that there is some concern with the specificity that's suggested here. I think if we go back and look at potential alternatives to address the need to address this area in the future, we can bring back some recommendations through the Planning Commission and back to this board that certainly gives recognition that there are needs in this area that need to be addressed at particular times. But I think I'd like some time with the staff and consultant to look at options and considerations here. I don't know, from what we've seen from, and staff has met with engineers from multiple representatives, there is not a compromise that seems to meet everybody's needs in this particular areas. There's preferences. There's certainly data that the other consultants have provided that may be contrary to what you're seeing here. So I think there is definitely other perspectives on this. I just do sense that there is not a consensus amongst the board to come up with an adoption of this level at this time. So let us go back and take a look at this and see, and bring back some other considerations.
Sure. Ran, if I can maybe, I don't know if this helps but I mean, conceivably, as far as I would be concerned, you could potentially color this area and footnote that there is some east, west, north, south solution out there pending. I mean, if we're dying to meet Miss McGee's need to get something onto the plan, then we could maybe offer her this as a potential solution to solve her problem. Just kidding.
That is one of
So,
our major
I mean,
goals.
You know, I mean, obviously, we've got to deal with the east, west, north, south pressure. I just don't think we know how to do it. It's almost like resembles the Hockett Road on the north end.
Yep.
Is we know we need to do something, but we don't know
Yep.
what will work. So, I don't know, I just feel, uncomfortable. I mean, I know somebody will get to take another bite of the apple in 5 years if there's a mark on the map, but in the meantime, the mark in the map becomes carved in stone. In some folks' minds, and I get concerned that, we know that from, actually the cut through at 280, under 288.
Yeah.
In that residential area, because that mark runs right up to the back of somebody's property.
Yep.
And we are anticipating putting a 6-lane road there. Wait till they find out about that. So, I just think we've got to be really, again, to identify it is fine. To really start to,
Yeah, I mean, we've already
carve this in
identified,
is
was it
tricky.
the Deep Run Hunt Country as having specific development concerns around it? Maybe this is another area, the Speed or whatever, that has a footnote that says, within this area, we need to consider traffic flow and so on and so forth. So at least it puts it on the map, puts it in the plan, says, here's the considerations, without actually putting it needs to connect to this road and that road. Is that?
Yeah, I apologize. I meant to just sort of let you guys feel freer to think 40 years out, who knows the property owners, and we don't have to
Yeah,
consider what's
right.
going on. But I did by no means intended to tell you all where or that you have to put maps on.
No,
I
no, no.
apologize.
No, we-
Never took it that way.
We just needed to blame somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we,
Politics.
So
Yes.
Mr. Minnick's peace offering would be sufficient, is that? Okay, just checking. So perhaps with that, now, so if I could just summarize, I guess, by the way, thank you very much for all the work you've done, and you've been doing a marvelous job answering all of our questions, so I appreciate that. If I could just summarize, and correct me if I'm wrong, board members, it seems like we have a consensus around a lot of this plan, at least 2 instances I can think of, we've asked you to do further study and come back. And this third instance, we've said there's an unsettled area. But beyond those specific areas, it looked like we had reached consensus on most of the rest. Is that kind of where we are, board? Is that?
no,
That's not where we are yet.
I'm at.
Okay,
Nope.
all right. Like to help us out with that?
Well, I mean, I'm still concerned about the east-west connector and the 288. I mean, VDOT's saying we don't have enough spacing. You're saying they can be creative. I think that's a pie in the sky. I think we are fooling ourselves if we think we're gonna bring traffic off 288 to the east-west connector in rush hour traffic and have that work. I don't see it. So what's Plan B?
Which slide are you talking about?
I'm on 70,
Are
well,
we not
71 and
including that in the
72.
unsettled?
This connection.
No, it's not part of the 5 circles, it's up further, the connection up further.
No.
The one about possible new interstate.
Oh.
Which slide?
I think that was the one. Ms. Lusky, just for clarity, this is about the potential for a new intersection?
No, I thought this
No,
was
okay.
connecting,
Oops.
on this map, where they're showing the distance is 600 feet.
Well,
That's-
okay.
All of that
That's-
is,
That's
That's
only
the
the
new-
unsettled.
That's the one that we're saying we're not settling on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I mean, we
speeder?
can't, I mean, that's just not gonna work.
Okay, so okay, so
So then
you're
why
agreeing
we
that
got an
the,
east-west connector there, we're not connected, what are we connected to?
exactly. So the SPIDA, which is the maps in the package that you're looking at, that whole area is the unsettled part. Remember I mentioned there's 2 areas for additional consideration, and then there's a third where it's an unsettled. Those
So
la-
what are you saying is settled?
All up to this point,
All up to this point.
with our comments.
The western
not
and-
those.
The western and central regions.
Okay, so
Yes.
we're, not- yeah, okay.
That whole page that you're looking at there, those
Thank
2,
you.
that
Okay.
is all unsettled at
Okay.
this point.
Then I
All
misunderstood your
that.
comment. Go ahead.
Well, I'm
Thank
glad,
you.
glad you clarified that. And then there are 2 other areas where it was for discussion, should be a 4 or a 6, and we asked them to go back and take a closer look to see if the data justified the additional lanes or not.
Three
Um,
chop, three
yeah,
chop.
three chop
being-
was one of
Three chop
them
being a big one.
because of the
and-
tunnel.
Yep.
And then there was a second one that one of the 4 discussion ones. We asked you to take a look at River Road as well to see if that really should be a 3 or
Yeah,
can it just
yeah,
stay as a
River
2?
Fairground Road, I think we all were,
You agreed as a 4?
yeah, we agreed as a 4 on Fairground Road.
I think it was River, Ashland, and 3 chop.
River, Ashland, and 3 chop to take a harder look to see if we justify the extra lanes. Okay.
Right.
And then this whole last 2 slides, this
Right.
whole SPIDA is all unsettled and may become a separate area designated on the comp plan, depending on how that goes. We'll ask Mr. Badesky to take a look at that and see if it makes sense.
And I did have one other thing that I actually thought about afterwards,
Okay.
it's in the west, and that's Shannon Hill Road 605 and I-64, where Louisa's are talking about putting a big industrial park there. So how's that going to impact that intersection and also 605 and 250? That's already a seriously dangerous intersection that they're keep messing with trying to fix. So it's just another piece of development coming our way sometime. So if we could include that too, I'd appreciate it. Okey-dokey.
Okay, board, other comments or thoughts at this point?
Thank you all. Thank you all. Good.
Thanks for your time.
And Mr. Kilduff, too.
Planned out.
Yeah, thanks you to everybody that's been involved with this. It's an ongoing process. We've had 2 community meetings and now this workshop. I mentioned earlier on, there might be time for citizen comment if we finished around 3. It's now almost 5. So what I'm going to do is remind people that there's at least 2 more opportunities for public comment. When this comes before the Planning Commission, there'll be a public hearing, and there'll be plenty of time for public comment then. When this comes back to us ultimately, before the Board of Supervisors, there'll be another opportunity with a public hearing. So that, hopefully that'll get, now if you have specific information, proposals, presentation, materials, maps, please give those to Lisa Biskiewicz, who's the clerk of this board, and she will ensure that we all get copies. So there'll be at least 2 more areas for opportunities for public comment, and there's always an opportunity to submit materials to the board. Hopefully that'll address, we don't like to miss an opportunity, but we've gone into extra innings already, and I want to thank everybody for their forbearance and in staying this long and participating in the process. That said, we are going to adjourn this board to the September 4th, 2018 meeting, starting at 11:30 a.m. with an audit committee meeting, which is open to the public, going at 1 o'clock for an employee service anniversary luncheon, and then 3 o'clock will be the regular Board of Supervisors meeting with a 7 p.m. public hearing meeting. And all of those, of course, are open to the public. So with that, without objection, I will go ahead and declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much and travel home safe.